The legendary Demon King Traynor, once defeated by a hero, remains a name known throughout the world. Waking up to the frantic calls of his maid, the young master slowly opens his eyes, processing the remnants of a bizarre dream as he sits upright in his own bed. Questioning the presence of Sadith while trying to regain his scattered senses, she suddenly pulls him into a tight, emotional embrace out of sheer relief. Left completely flustered and blushing, he stammers her name while she clings to him. Curious about his surroundings, he asks why he was brought back to his room. She recounts finding him collapsed and unconscious near the ancient pedestal earlier that day. Although still feeling slightly lightheaded, he realizes he has managed to recover. An unexpected demonic figure suddenly manifests right before him, sitting calmly on his bed. He screams in terror at the apparition, while his maid looks on in complete confusion. The entity stares him down with an intense gaze, mocking his visible distress. Attempting to play off the encounter, he watches as Sadith dismisses his antics as childish. She cheerfully heads out to prepare dinner, leaving him alone with the mysterious guest. The spirit remains seated, reminding him that she has already explained her presence. She emphasizes that he is the only person capable of perceiving her voice. With a smug expression, she confirms his suspicion that she is indeed the great Demon King. Accepting the impossible reality, he questions why she was lingering within the royal armory. She explains her spirit was sealed inside the hero's sword following her defeat long ago. For 15 years, she remained trapped in the dark room, unbeknownst to the hero himself. Traynor reveals that for some mysterious reason, she is now inextricably bound to the young boy's soul. The boy laments his fate, realizing he is being haunted by the ghost of the great Demon King. Traynor floats alongside him, explaining that her spiritual form prevents any direct interaction with the physical world. The ancient monarch sighs deeply, expressing her profound weariness after being imprisoned for so many long years. She suddenly demands a trip to the outside world, but the boy immediately shouts his refusal. He argues that a former world-threatening menace has no business roaming freely among the common people. Traynor attempts to assert her dominance with a terrifying expression, though the boy remains unimpressed by her claims. Shifting tactics, the Demon King begins to pout like a petulant child, much to the boy's extreme annoyance. She continues her stubborn display, grumbling about her inability to leave the room tonight without his assistance. Staring intensely at her exaggerated expression, he begs her to stop making such a ridiculous face. The spirit body begins rubbing against him in a bizarrely intimate way, causing the boy to panic. Overwhelmed by her persistence, he finally relents and agrees to take her out for a brief stroll. As he prepares to leave, Traynor nods with pure excitement while he insists on a very quick walk. Sadith suddenly appears at the door with a tray of food, questioning where her young master's heading. Sweating nervously, he claims he is merely heading into town for a short period to clear his head. The maid's demeanor changes instantly, her voice turning cold as she repeats his excuse about going out. In a terrifying display of skill, she pins him against the wall with silverware, questioning his desire to live. She reminds him that she brought him here specifically to help him recover after his recent failures. The boy is left speechless when she mentions her original plan to pamper him with a hot bath. With a dark and menacing aura, she concludes that since he is healthy enough to go out, he is fine. Sadith looms over him with a terrifying grin, declaring that skipping afternoon classes requires a very harsh punishment. Both the boy and the spectral Demon King watch in silent dread as the situation escalates quite rapidly. A blood-curdling scream echoes through the night air from within the walls of the massive family estate. The following morning arrives with the bustling town streets filled with ordinary citizens going about their daily lives. Walking through the crowd, the exhausted young man struggles to stay awake after his agonizing ordeal last night. Although he finally escaped Sadith's clutches, he realizes a much more persistent problem is currently hovering nearby. Traynor is absolutely mesmerized by a magical street lamp, demanding to know the secrets of its illuminating power. She leaps atop a moving steam streetcar, marveling at how fire and water magic drive human transportation. While she sparkles with childlike wonder at these advancements, the boy can only sigh at her unexpected enthusiasm. Pausing their walk, he asks for her honest impression of the town based on everything seen so far. Her expression shifts into a somber, reflective gaze as she prepares to deliver a brutally honest assessment. She coughs at the streetcar exhaust while noting how humans have conveniently forgotten the devastating crises of old. They encounter a drunkard passed out in the street, a sight that makes the Demon King want to hide. Turning her back to the scenery, the ancient monarch reflects on the fragility of the world she once fought. The boy shudders as she coldly admits that her first instinct would be to annihilate everything in sight. Regardless of her lingering destructive impulses, she admits that her current spiritual form renders her completely powerless. They witness a soldier sharing a tender moment with his family, the direct result of the peace she lost. She acknowledges that human ingenuity has built a reality that replaced the chaotic world of her own era. Looking out over the cityscape, she finally accepts the weight of her defeat and her current lack of purpose. He finds it deeply unsettling that her desire for destruction remains unchanged despite the peaceful world before them. The history books always depicted the great Demon King as a vicious, bloodthirsty tyrant who sought only ruin. Yet the woman currently floating before him seems to possess much broader, more complex views of the world. She watches the city below with a sharp gaze, fully aware of her inability to interact with anything. Seeing her from behind as her long hair flows, the boy notes that her silhouette appears strangely lonely. He admits to himself that he has one major regret, though he cannot bring himself to voice it. Suddenly turning away, she mentions the hero and his party with a distinctly menacing and cold tone. She recalls the fateful day her enemies declared the end. Standing defiant against the overwhelming hero's party, her eyes narrow in the flashback, focusing intently on the humans who gathered to challenge her ancient reign. The hero raised a brilliant, glowing sword, claiming that the collective power of humanity resided within the blade. Stunned by the revelation of such united strength, she could only watch as the light began to surge. Reaching out in a final, desperate plea, she shouted for them to wait as the magic consumed everything. Fear gripped her face while she realized that the combined force of the humans would surely kill her. A colossal pillar of light erupted, completely obliterating the castle tower in a display of absolute, blinding power. Back in the present, she grins with pure irritation at the unfairness of 7 heroes jumping one person. She clutches her head and screams in absolute fury, clearly still bitter about her ignoble defeat years ago. Stomping her feet like a child, she complains about the lack of honor in a 7-on-1 ambush. As the conversation shifts, a heavy silence falls between them while they continue their walk through the streets. The boy points out that she surely had her own massive demon army to support her back then. Clearly offended by the logic, she huffs and commands him to ask no more questions about the past. He watches her walk away in a huff, wondering if his simple observation managed to strike a nerve. Stopping at a bookstore, Traynor is utterly shocked to discover that her favorite series has released multiple sequels. The Spectral Queen immediately demands that he purchase the book, her intensity overwhelming the poor boy. She passionately confesses to being a lifelong follower of the franchise, leaving him with no choice but to comply. Traynor menacingly threatens to whisper in his ear incessantly all day long unless he buys the new volume. Victorious, she cheers for the worthy cause as they both dash toward their next destination before they are late. While they move, she casually mentions her ability to hear his inner thoughts, negating any need for spoken words. The school bells toll across the grand campus, signaling the start of the next period for the weary students. Settling into the lecture hall, the invisible Demon King hovers right behind the boy to observe the lesson. Her curiosity piqued, Traynor asks about the identity of the blonde girl sitting diligently at the desk ahead. He explains that she is Princess Fiancée, the daughter of his father's former comrade, the great hero Solya. Watching the girl work, the monarch notes her impressive intellect and ability to master complex elementary subjects quickly. Traynor observes a powerful magical aura radiating from the princess, whose every pen stroke is marked by absolute precision. The young man realizes that her dedication likely extends to martial arts, making her a formidable opponent indeed. It becomes clear that even a legendary ruler like Traynor can recognize the princess's truly exceptional talents. Suddenly, the Demon King attempts to get his attention. As the atmosphere in the classroom shifts unexpectedly, a heavy book strikes him directly on the head with a loud thud, interrupting his internal monologue. The stern instructor scolds him for being brave enough to ignore the lecture while everyone else is focused. He is further mortified when the teacher publicly accuses him of staring at the princess for an extended time. Princess Fiancée becomes a blushing mess, desperately hiding her face behind her book to conceal her deep embarrassment. As a final punishment, the teacher demands he identify the 3 major magic eyes and Traynor's specific abilities. Standing up at his desk, the boy realizes with mounting panic that he has not heard a single word. He desperately tries to recall the names of legendary magic eyes, while the entire class watches him struggle. Taking a deep breath, he begins to stammer out an answer about the heraldic eye to satisfy the teacher. Trainer suddenly intervenes, shouting a frantic warning that the textbook information is actually a cleverly designed ruse. Throwing caution to the wind, he boldly declares that the Demon King actually possessed the legendary Six-Gate Eye. The classroom falls into a stunned silence as his classmates react with utter confusion to his bizarre historical claim. Even Traynor appears taken aback by the intensity of his outburst as he stands firm in his correction. The teacher accuses him of mocking the lesson, while Traynor insists her own version of history is the truth. Furious at his perceived insolence, the instructor bellows that he will be staying after school for disciplinary action. He immediately blames the spiritual queen for his predicament, though she maintains the teacher's historical facts are simply inaccurate. Feeling the weight of expectation, he is reminded that as the hero's son, failure is not an option. Trainer observes his inner turmoil, noting that he is destined to be a top performer regardless of his current state. The academy bells ring out across the courtyard, carrying a stern warning not to fail his upcoming match. Letting out a long, weary sigh, he gazes up at the architecture while contemplating his difficult academic standing. Walking together after class, he grumbles about the detention while she maintains her innocence regarding the historical dispute. Turning to him, she inquires about the specific nature of the tournament match the teacher previously mentioned. He explains the graduation match, a prestigious annual tournament where top students showcase their skills to the kingdom's nobility. Clarifying further, he notes it serves as a critical scouting event for the world's most elite warrior organizations. She questions if he has made any actual preparations for the event since he was told to take it seriously. Looking completely defeated, he admits he is only preparing himself for the inevitable public embarrassment of his performance. Traynor remains silent for a moment before acknowledging the boy's defeated outlook with a simple, knowing remark. Shifting the conversation, she asks for clarification on the blonde girl, Princess Fiancée, whom they discussed earlier. The boy turns away dismissively, insisting he has already explained everything she needs to know about the situation. Floating closer, Traynor reveals she can easily hear his internal thoughts and sense the palpable envy he harbors. She points out his deep-seated fear of never matching the princess or his father's legendary, heroic legacy. With a piercing gaze, she observes that while he wants revenge, he has already resigned himself to failure. The ancient queen compares him to a trapped genius who surrendered to weakness instead of finding a way out. Erupting in a sudden fit of rage, the boy shouts about his endless, fruitless efforts to meet everyone's expectations. Traynor remains completely unimpressed by his outburst, labeling his desperate justification as nothing more than a feeble counter-argument. Her expression hardens as she prepares to deliver a harsh truth that she had anticipated from the beginning. He retaliates by insulting his own father, Hero, claiming the hero merely stumbled blindly through a series of miracles. Looking him in the eye, she tells him that this lack of luck is exactly why he fails. His fist trembles with suppressed anger while he struggles to find the words to respond to her biting criticism. He laments the crushing weight of being judged by those who constantly look down on him from above. Finally reaching his breaking point, he lashes out at the spectral queen with a loud, aggressive insult. Tears of frustration well up as he questions the painful idea that he can never actually surpass his father. Traynor mocks his past defeat, reminding him how he complained about the unfairness of the hero's final battle. He desperately defends his honor, claiming he would have been victorious if the fight had truly been a duel. Closing her eyes, she dismisses his passionate defense as nothing more than a pathetic collection of hollow excuses. The boy screams in a blind rage, demanding that she stop lecturing him about the meaning of true strength. Traynor's expression turns cold and shadowed, calling the boy a wretch for relying on pathetic, hollow excuses. He stands completely paralyzed as the spectral monarch forbids him from ever speaking to her that way. Manifesting a terrifying presence, the Demon King looms over him with a sharp and menacing hand extended. She forcefully declares that he will soon serve as living proof of her truly unmatched ancient power. The boy winces in fear as she claims to be far more formidable than the legendary hero. Earth wonders how a mere spirit body can generate such a tangible and suffocating sense of pure dread. Leaning in with a predatory gaze, she vows to use the miserable boy to achieve her goals. With a wicked grin, she promises to personally school him in the devastating power of a king. Flashbacks reveal Princess Fiancée weeping into a pillow under the crushing weight of the entire world's expectations. Young Earth listens intently as his father smiles, reminding him of his duty to protect everyone alive. Trainar's menacing aura returns, promising that the entire world will soon bear witness to her supreme might. She points a demanding finger toward him, noting that the Academy's decisive match has not occurred yet. The ancient ruler suggests they begin their journey together by thoroughly testing his current overall fighting ability. In an unexpected turn, the boy flatly refuses her training offer while looking completely bored and unmotivated. Trainar fumes with rage at his laziness, while he complains that working hard is such a pain. He argues that since the match is only 2 months away, the prodigy princess will certainly win. Crossing her arms, she retorts that his perceived lack of talent is simply a flaw in his perspective. The Demon King pokes him repeatedly, mocking how easy it should be for a fresh hatchling to grow. He reflects on his failed past, recalling strenuous training sessions with the elite knight Sadath at the academy. Despite his constant independent practice, he laments how a true prodigy effortlessly dismantles all of his hard work. Lying alone on the grass, Aerith drowns in the disparaging voices calling him a useless, insignificant disappointment. Observing his despair, Trainar deduces that he lacks motivation because he has never discovered his own true purpose. She asks what he truly wants for his future, receiving a half-hearted answer about becoming an Imperial Knight. Questioning the sincerity of his path, she wonders if that choice was forced upon him by society's expectations. She warns him that without a clear personal goal, he will never find the drive to truly excel. Aerith reflects on the hollow path of a knight, realizing he only chose it to keep things stable. Everyone expects him to mirror his legendary father, but he begins to doubt if that is his destiny. Deep within his heart, he asserts his own individuality, wondering what it is he actually desires for himself. Trainar suggests setting a goal closer to the present, focusing on the upcoming events within his immediate reach. Pointing a sharp claw toward him, she declares that winning his upcoming match must be his first objective. She notes that the grueling 2 months ahead will require a powerful spark to keep him moving forward. Rather than relying on abstract justice, the Demon King suggests an impure, selfish motivation might be far more effective. The sun begins to set over the Grand Academy as the weight of their conversation settles over them. Trainar begins assembling a strange rope tool on the ground, preparing for their first secret training session together. Earth watches with visible skepticism as she proudly displays the makeshift ladder she constructed for his physical conditioning. She introduces the exercise as ladder training, a basic but essential method for honing his speed and coordination. The ancient queen explains that these repetitive movements will eventually unlock a legendary, high-speed footwork technique for him. With stars in her eyes, she enthusiastically reveals the technique's grand name, the magical step. Feeling a sudden wave of second-hand embarrassment, the boy internally groans at her surprisingly childish naming sense. Trainar huffs and pouts at his lack of enthusiasm, visibly annoyed by his underwhelming reaction to her masterpiece. Trainar provides a visual demonstration of the ladder training while privately fretting over her exposed inner thoughts. Meanwhile, Aerith contemplates the heavy gravity of receiving personal combat instructions from the world's most legendary villain. The Spectral Queen positions herself at the start of the rope device and announces her intention to begin. She instantly transforms into a blur of extreme speed, navigating the complex pattern with effortless and terrifying grace. After completing the course, she strikes a dramatic, sparkling pose that highlights her immense pride in the technique. The young master responds with genuine confusion, which quickly triggers a comedic outburst of rage from his mentor. She refocuses his attention, explaining that the foundation of the drill requires him to align his feet perfectly. The monarch demonstrates the basic straight jump, planning to devise a more impressive name for it eventually. Watching her repetitively hop in her dark clothing, Earth begins to form a very disrespectful mental comparison. He struggles to contain his amusement during the process of visualizing the Demon King as a skittering beetle. Trainar catches his insulting thought and reacts with pure fury, prompting a hasty and nervous apology from him. Moving past the insult, she briskly announces that it is time to advance to the next developmental stage. She performs a series of rapid zigzag leaps across the rungs, maintaining a perfectly tight ankle position throughout. Earth collapses in laughter when his mind creates a ridiculous image of her, wiggling like a tiny shrimp. His laughter is cut short by a lethal death glare from the queen, who is losing her patience. She demonstrates a more complex rhythm, alternating between landing on a single foot and then both feet simultaneously. Trainar explains the movement by referencing a traditional children's game, instructing him to follow the Ken Pa beat. This specific comparison triggers a nostalgic childhood memory of Earth playing games with friends in the city streets. Within the flashback, a cheerful young girl excitedly calls out that it is finally time for Trainer's turn. Even as the memory depicts her playing, the current Phantom Queen threatens to end Earth's life for his mockery. Earth apologizes to an enraged Trainar, who emphasizes the absolute necessity of this specialized training regimen. She instructs him to cast specific magic attributes while simultaneously performing the precise footwork steps. Shouting a command to execute a cross-step fueled by fire magic, she forces him into action. The young man prepares to leap, simple-mindedly believing that combining magic and movement will be easy. As he jumps, sparks of magical energy flicker around him, yet he immediately senses something is wrong. His foot lands heavily upon the grass, lacking the grace and speed demonstrated by his ghostly mentor. Struggling to catch his breath, he realizes his physical body cannot keep up with his mental commands. Trainer explains that ladder training is designed to sharpen footwork, heel turns, and overall battlefield agility. Illustrating his error, she points out that he was focusing solely on his feet rather than magic. She provides analogies of writing while talking to describe the difficulty of multitasking during intense combat. The Demon King highlights the common problem of the body lagging behind the mind's rapid tactical decisions. Earth recalls a past duel where the princess's incredible speed rendered his own reactions completely useless. Motivated by his shortcomings, he shouts with renewed determination to jump back into the grueling training session. The sky fills with rapid-fire commands as he strives to perfectly execute every difficult wind-cross step. Heavy panning echoes through the air surrounding the academy building as the sun begins its slow descent. Collapsing onto the ground in total exhaustion, he admits his legs are trembling and his head is spinning. Trainar proudly declares that he is experiencing her original magic ladder training. Despite Earth's quiet disapproval, staring at his twitching limbs, he reflects on his poor physical condition compared to his high self-expectations. She casually dismisses his suffering, announcing that this intense drill is merely a basic daily warm-up routine. Looking up from his crouched position, he asks when they will finally begin practicing actual heroic swordsmanship. Earth remembers imitating his father's magic swordsmanship through years of grueling and dedicated practice. However, Trainar bluntly declares that they will not be working on his sword skills at all. The young master is stunned when she ruthlessly informs him that he lacks any talent for the blade. She looks him in the eye while recalling her very first impression of his clumsy combat style. Explaining her reasoning, she notes that Hero's specific fighting style simply does not suit his inner nature. Trainar details how the hero's magic sword requires extraordinary magical capacity to concentrate power into a single point. She delivers a crushing blow by stating Earth simply does not possess that specific and rare ability. Earth suddenly bursts into hollow laughter as he collapses onto the grass in a fit of utter defeat. He agonizes over the 15 long years he spent practicing every single day since he was small. Looking back at a lifetime of failed effort, he feels like his entire existence has been a waste. Despair washes over him as he realizes all those painful years of training were apparently for naught. Breaking the heavy silence, Trainar admits she has been carefully observing his movements for several days. She identifies his true strength as a unique flexibility that even his legendary father Hero never possessed. Describing his physical frame as supple and spring-like, she recognizes a latent power starting to surface. To his complete shock, she reveals that his instincts actually mirror his mother, the renowned priestess Mamu. She clarifies that his true genius lies within physical techniques rather than utilizing the hero's magic sword. Encouraging him to focus on his own individual talents, she hints at a power beyond any noble. Earth stares in total disbelief as she makes the ultimate claim that he could eventually defeat Hero. Overwhelmed by this sudden shift in destiny, he laughs maniacally while remaining seated on the ground. Grinning wildly, he relishes the thought of surprising everyone by abandoning the path of the sword. Earth grins with newfound confidence, eager to prove everyone wrong during the upcoming match. He clenches his fist and begs Trainar to guide him along his own unique path. Suddenly, Sadith appears behind him with her arms crossed, questioning exactly who he is talking to. She mockingly wonders if her young master has finally succumbed to loneliness and created an imaginary friend. The maid notes the suspicious size of his bag earlier as she investigates the makeshift equipment. Earth remains tense while Sadith carefully examines the rope ladder, her sharp eyes searching for meaning. He continues the charade by claiming the idea originated from his imaginary companion to protect Trainar's secret. Sadith ponders the ridiculous nature of the setup, while he wonders if she has already seen through him. Shifting the subject, the boy asks about her sudden arrival as she reaches into her clothing. She pulls out a handwritten nutritional menu, leaving Earth completely flustered and blushing at her gesture. Trainer hovers over his shoulder to inspect the document, her expression turning quite analytical and serious. The Demon King remarks on the incredible richness of the meal plan detailed on the small paper. Earth mentions that her cooking is always delicious, though Trainer clarifies her observation was about biology. She explains that Sadith clearly understands complex dietary values and cares deeply about his physical health. With an expert gaze, the monarch notes that the maid's devotion is evident from these simple plans. Earth stares at the menu in silence, his mind filled with thoughts of Sadith's consistent support. A flashback reveals how his mother once protected the young war orphan from the demon army. In another memory, a younger Earth excitedly dashes through the hall to greet his returning parents. His parents apologetically explain they must depart for a formal dinner, leaving the boy behind again. The young boy stands alone in the dim hallway, told to go to bed as his disappointment grows. Young Earth stands alone as the heavy doors slam shut, leaving him in a silent hallway. He stares at the closed double doors that signify his parents' constant and painful absence. Sadith calls out to him, finally breaking the young boy's lonely and melancholy reverie. She peers through the doorway to find the young master standing isolated within the mansion. To her surprise, she sees he achieved an elite grade through his own immense effort. Kneeling with a warm smile, she promises to celebrate his spectacular achievement that very day. She offers him a special treat as a reward for his incredible hard work. Leading him away by the hand, she acts as the mother figure he desperately needed. Returning to the present, Trainor encourages Earth to finally be honest about his hidden feelings. The ancient monarch watches with a smirk as the boy's resolve begins to waver slightly. Sadith questions if her arrival interrupted him, unaware of the internal battle he is fighting. Clenching his fists, he bellows that he will definitely win his match in 2 months. He adds a bold condition regarding their relationship, catching the maid completely off guard. His mind spirals through romantic fantasies of dating and marriage before he reaches a limit. In a moment of pure panic, he blurts out an incredibly inappropriate and perverted demand. The surrounding air grows cold while the three figures stand in a stunned, awkward silence. He screams in absolute horror, realizing the massive mistake he has just made aloud. He desperately tries to apologize as Sadith begins to emit an ominous and dark aura. Regretting his lack of restraint, he realizes he should have taken things much more slowly. Sadith transforms into a terrifying, shadowy monster as Earth frantically begs for her forgiveness. Earth sits in a daze with a nosebleed, completely stunned by the shocking response he just received. Trainer calls his request utterly repulsive, while the boy remains in a state of absolute mental shock. Sadith looks back with a firm expression, admitting that the scumbag's declaration briefly left her totally stunned. She offers a scandalous reward for his victory, driving the young man into a hysterical, overexcited frenzy. With the agreement set, the maid simply turns and walks away while bidding him a very cheerful goodbye. Fueled by perverted determination, the boy bellows his resolve to the heavens with a burst of energy. Trainor sighs at his impure motivation, even though she realizes her own advice was the actual cause. He leaps with chaotic joy, shouting about winning the match to claim his promised and lewd reward. Despite the current excitement, he reflects privately on how great he was feeling in that fleeting moment. A dark premonition flashes of Sadith weeping in despair as he runs toward a future of failure. The Spectral Queen abruptly ends the warming-up period, signaling the start of their true training session. Trainor issues a formal challenge, ordering the boy to face her in a serious and spiritual duel. Roaring with intense passion, he charges forward to finally begin his journey toward actual combat mastery. He contemplates the hollow praise of others and the heavy burden of being the hero's second coming. Despite the smile on his face, he realizes he is currently living through his absolute worst day. Visions of exile and warrior failure haunt his mind while the Demon King stands silently beside him. Regardless of the impending hardships, he decides to view this fateful meeting as a profound cosmic blessing. The unlikely alliance between the hero's son and the Demon King officially begins its first grand arc. Students gather in the wide academy courtyard to witness the day's intense and competitive sparring matches. The princess strikes with overwhelming speed, scoring a decisive point while Earth lies completely defeated on the ground. Princess Fiancé stands victorious once again, maintaining her undefeated streak at the prestigious academy as graduation slowly approaches. She gazes down at Earth, reminding him of her noble lineage and how far he still has to go. Kneeling on the dusty ground, Earth struggles to catch his breath after another demoralizing defeat against his childhood friend. Fiancé acknowledges his marginal progress in both magic and swordsmanship since their last intense sparring match together. However, she points out his failure to master the legendary magic sword art, forcing Earth to smile through his humiliation. Standing apart in the vast courtyard, she insists they are equals and childhood friends despite their differing social statuses. Letting out a weary sigh, Earth asks her to finally drop the formal honorifics that only serve to annoy him. Fiancé continues her relentless lecturing, reminding him of his duty to eventually become a knight and protect the royal palace. Earth grows increasingly irritated as she complains about spending her precious time as a princess educating him. Meanwhile, nearby students gossip about Earth's hidden strength and cool demeanor. Oblivious to his current predicament, they discuss his high academic rankings and wealth, adding another layer of societal pressure onto his shoulders. Suddenly losing her composure, the princess charges toward the gossiping girls with an aggressive and startling shout. She frantically warns the other students away, labeling Aerith as a perverse sourpuss who is not worth their attention. Lost in a jealous rage, she publicly exposes his secret collection of naughty books to completely destroy his reputation. Earth clutches his head in despair, lamenting how the princess always finds new ways to sabotage his social life. He wanders off alone, wondering if she truly hates him that much while clinging to his own secret motivations. The atmosphere remains awkward as Fiancé tries to regain her dignity after her wildly emotional and unregal outburst. He contemplates the crushing weight of his father's legacy, fearing the great hero would be disappointed in his progress. Standing in somber silence, he quietly agrees with his inner demons while the burden of expectation weighs him down. The loud tolling of the academy bells echoes across the campus, mocking him with their grand and hollow sounds. Students walk through hallways, grumbling about their aching bodies and fearing they might not graduate, while nearby Imperial Knights harshly critique the current generation, claiming they lack the necessary drive and talent, prompting one soldier to sigh at the perceived weakness of the youth as they stand guard. Regardless, Earth unleashes a concentrated blast of thunder magic while training alone to improve his skills. As a knight watches silently from a distance while the young master pushes himself toward exhaustion, the soldiers mockingly note that despite his dedication, he still consistently loses to the formidable princess. They compare Lord Hero's legendary wartime achievements with the failure of his son to surpass his peers. Feeling the sting of their words, the boy grits his teeth as the public questions his talent. Meanwhile, a vision of the 7 brave heroes who once saved mankind from total annihilation flashes before him, reminding him that his father was one of those legendary figures who established the world's current peace. Yet Earth remains perpetually stuck in the princess's shadow, constantly ranking second in academics and martial arts. As the knights continue their severe evaluation, noting how other heroes' children seem to possess magnificent talent, overhearing their blunt conversation, the boy suddenly interrupts with a somber apology that visibly startles both guards. He admits to feeling deeply ashamed for showing the professional Imperial Knights such a pitiful display of weakness. However, the soldiers attempt to console him, arguing that losing to a high-ranking royal is perfectly understandable. Internally, he finds their self-important lectures embarrassing as they bring up his father's unmatched early success. Unexpectedly, Lord Hero himself appears in the courtyard, boldly asking the knights to look after his incompetent son. Seeing his legendary father standing right there, Earth reacts with a mixture of intense shock and annoyance. Hero attempts to bond by sharing stories of his own repeated defeats against the princess's father years ago, and finally concludes his thought by mockingly reminding Earth that his current opponent is just a girl. Hero brags about being drafted into battle with Earth's mother, retelling old stories of his own past glory. Staring down at his feet, the boy feels his father cares more about himself than his son's plight. He asks if he could finally defeat the princess if his father trained him personally from the scratch. Smiling brightly, the legendary hero apologizes and explains that he is far too busy with his important work. Hero tells him to learn from the instructors or Sadith instead, leaving the boy trembling with silent rage. He reflects on his mundane education, realizing he has only taught standard topics, unlike his father's heroic generation. Memories of exhausting late-night study sessions and lonely sword practice haunt him as he struggles with public expectations. A vision of the princess walking away into the light emphasizes the vast gap between their natural abilities. Hero clenches his fist while telling his son to hang in there because he is a slow grower. Earth is stunned by the remark, questioning how his father could know his growth without ever being present. He screams in a fit of rage, wondering why he cannot just be happy with a second-place ranking. The boy pleads for even a small amount of genuine praise while his father watches him in silence. Letting out a frustrated scoff, Earth realizes the distance between them is greater than he ever imagined before. He marches away down the academy corridor, declaring that he has no interest in his father's hollow pity. Gazing at the school tower from afar, he wishes that someone would finally notice the effort he makes. The sun sets over the grand estate as the quiet evening light begins to settle over the landscape. Returning home, Aerith finds Sadith watering roses in the garden, while the late afternoon sun casts long shadows. He peeks from behind a stone wall to observe her, noticing a new side to her usual composed appearance. The gentle welcome from the maid makes his heart race as he blushes deeply while looking at her. She giggles and playfully tells him to head back to the academy since classes are still in session. Earth stands alone, his mind clouded by the biting words of his peers and the weight of failure. He finds comfort in the presence of his personal maid, Sadith, who tends to the garden with grace. Reflecting on their shared history, he recalls his mother taking her in as an orphan many years ago. Despite her beauty, he recognizes her twisted personality even while secretly harboring a desire to marry her. Attempting to hide his shame, he claims a headache caused his early departure as she mocks his weak spirit. She directly asks if he lost to the princess again, hitting a sore spot in his fragile pride. The boy begrudgingly admits that the challenge was overwhelming, unable to find a favorable way to explain himself. Even with his high grades, he feels like a mere placeholder in the ranks of the Imperial Knights. Sadith deduces the true cause of his sulking, connecting it to the heavy expectations placed on a hero's son. She correctly guesses that he encountered his father, Lord Hero, causing Earth to look away in silence. Frustrated by the constant comparisons, he laments how the world only sees him as the hero's child. He admits his deep disappointment, feeling that everyone exploits his lineage for their own selfish and petty convenience. The maid acknowledges the unreasonable level of expectation forced upon him since the moment of his birth. Surprisingly, she reminds him that his legendary father actually struggled immensely during his own time at the academy. She notes that Earth, unlike his father, has consistently achieved excellent results throughout his academic career. With a warm smile, she explains that people watch him because they truly hope to see him succeed. The boy is left speechless as she describes him as someone precious and widely respected by everyone around. Despite her usual sharp tongue, he realizes she is the only one who consistently supports him during his failures. He acknowledges that he has completely fallen in love with her, recalling their deep bond from childhood. She offers a mysterious secret prize for his victory, leaving the young master in a state of utter shock. Sadith offers Irith his childhood favorite omelet meal, playfully teasing him with a small drawn heart. Irith realizes Sadith is aware of his feelings, while she walks away giggling over her joke. Blushing intensely, the young man wonders if her offer will actually improve his currently gloomy mood. She casually mentions that it is time for the annual cleaning of the mansion's mysterious sealed room. Sadith continues teasing the adolescent master about his wandering imagination while he tells her to shut up. They approach a solitary candlelit alcove set deep within the dark stone walls of the mansion's basement. A row of various ancient swords hangs prominently displayed against the cold and aged brick wall. Sadith leaves to fetch more cleaning supplies, leaving the boy alone with several heavy equipment bags. Irith receives a ring of heavy iron keys to the legendary swords exhibition room from the maid. She mockingly challenges him to steal the blade, knowing it is far too heavy for him. The young master walks down the dark, silent corridor alone, clutching the cold metal keys tightly. He finally reaches the massive double doors, which are heavily secured with thick iron chains and padlocks. Irith reflects on the legendary Great War that ravaged the lands long before his own birth. He recalls history lessons of his father's hero party, clashing against the terrifying and powerful demon race. The Great War concluded when humanity triumphed and the Demon King was finally slain by Hero's blade. Following that victory, the legendary sword was sealed away on a pedestal inside this very vault. In his childhood, merely catching a small glimpse of the sacred relic would make his heart race. Proclaiming he is no longer a little child, Irith fits the first key into the heavy lock. He grunts with physical effort while slowly pushing open the massive, creaking doors to the inner vault. Upon entering the long-sealed room, Earth's eyes widen in absolute shock at the unexpected sight before him. The long-sealed door finally creaks open, revealing a mysterious, spectral woman with flowing white hair and horns. She gazes upward with a look of profound relief, celebrating her long-awaited release from the dark vault. Earth trembles in absolute terror as the unknown entity manifests right before his very eyes in the room. The spirit notes that this marks the 15th time the heavy doors have been opened over the years. Touching her dark horn, she realizes with a pensive expression that 15 years have actually passed since then. She observes the young man, noting he is certainly not the maid who usually visits this dusty chamber. Her eyes narrow with recognition as she realizes she is looking at the legendary hero's own offspring. Earth grits his teeth, sensing an ancient and odious presence that feels strangely familiar to his heroic bloodline. She stares back with curiosity while he wonders if a demon or a burglar has broken inside. As Sadith calls out from the hallway, the mysterious spirit questions if the boy can actually see her. The maid enters the room and scolds her master for being noisy while looking for the legendary sword. He points frantically at the floating figure, warning Sadith about the presence of a weird and dangerous person. Sadith looks directly at the spot but sees nothing, questioning if her young master has lost his mind. She mockingly asks if his prolonged virginity is finally causing him to suffer from vivid and strange illusions. Picking up a cleaning tool, she assumes he is trying to pull a childish prank to scare her. The maid laughs off his claims and heads back upstairs to fetch more water for their cleaning task. Earth recoils in visible panic as the spectral woman suddenly moves closer to him with a sharp gaze. The entity finds it peculiar that he is the only human capable of perceiving her current spiritual form. In a desperate act of self-defense, he grabs a nearby mop and swings it toward the phantom's head. Irith lunges at the spectral woman with a heavy mop, determined to drive the intruder out of the vault. He swings the tool with lightning-fast intensity, yet it passes through her ghostly form without making any contact. Traynor watches his clumsy attempt with a critical eye, noting that his technique is far too unrefined and coarse. She compares his movements to his father Hero, whose mastery of the magic sword remains unmatched by any human. The ancient monarch tells him bluntly that he is nowhere near his father's level of combat prowess and skill. Fueled by an explosive burst of anger, the boy shouts for the ghost to shut up as he lunges. He continues to strike frantically while she stands motionless, completely unaffected by his repeated and desperate physical attacks. Dismissing his efforts as utterly pointless, the spectral queen turns her back on him with an air of superiority. She explains that her spiritual body renders all physical assaults harmless, mockery evident in her sharp and knowing grin. Irith stands paralyzed by the revelation, struggling to understand how to handle an opponent he cannot even touch. The entity decides the time is right to reveal the truth of her identity to the hero's struggling son. She triumphantly declares her name is Traynor, the great demon king whom his father supposedly vanquished long ago. The boy stares in absolute horror, realizing he is in the presence of the world's most terrifying historical nightmare. He contemplates his own failure to live up to the title of the hero's second coming throughout his life. Despite reaching what feels like the worst day ever, he reflects on the shame of his current weak state. Meeting this legendary figure in the dark changes everything, offering a chance to escape his father's suffocating shadow. He pledges to view this fateful encounter as a blessing that will eventually lead him toward his own path. The hero's son and the demon king form a unique alliance, embarking on a hot-blooded and exhilarating journey together. The scene shifts to the academy courtyard, where a crowd of students watches the final sparring match of the day. The princess delivers a crushing blow that ends the duel, proving she remains the academy's most talented and powerful warrior. Princess Fiancé sheathes her blade amidst the admiring cheers of students following her latest and most convincing academy triumph. She gazes down with a cold intensity, critiquing Earth's combat skills and calling his fighting spirit naive. Sweat-drenched and panting, the hero's son kneels in the dirt after failing to match the princess's superior speed. Fiancé observes the magical residue on his sword, admitting that his magic and blade control are slowly improving. He wears a self-deprecating smile as she points out his continued failure to master the magic sword technique. Moving toward the pillars, she reminds him that they are childhood friends and equals despite their different statuses. The frustrated boy sighs heavily, finding her formal manner and superficial use of honorifics deeply irritating to endure. His rival launches into a lengthy lecture about his duty to become a knight and protect the palace. He grows increasingly bitter as she complains about balancing her royal obligations with his constant, lackluster performance. Nearby, a group of girls whisper about his wild charm and hidden strength, finding him surprisingly alluring. They discuss his high status and academic success, while Fiancé listens in with a twitching, angry expression. Suddenly snapping, the royal lunges toward the group of gossiping students with a startlingly loud and aggressive shout. She frantically warns them off, branding Earth as a perverse contrarian who is completely unworthy of their attention. The girl continues her public rant, claiming he is a lecher who hides scandalous books in his room. Earth clutches his head in despair as the students laugh and mockingly reject him as a potential boyfriend. He wanders away alone, bitter that his friend sabotages every good vibe he receives from other girls. The noble looks away awkwardly, attempting to salvage her dignity after her uncharacteristic and highly emotional public outburst. The boy sinks into a deep depression, fearing his legendary father would be profoundly disappointed in his failures. Standing in somber silence, the youth concludes that he is simply not enough to satisfy the world's expectations. The academy bells toll across the campus, echoing the words he is truly tired of hearing every day. Students chatter in hallways about aching bodies and the looming fear of not graduating. Armored knights lament that the new generation is lacking and simply doesn't have what it takes. One guard sighs in disappointment, remarking that the current state of affairs is truly sad. Alone in the courtyard, Earth unleashes a massive blast of thunder magic against a training dummy. A knight watches from afar as the young master continues to push himself through grueling practice. During his break, Earth tirelessly swings his sword, haunted by his recent loss to the princess. Huffing and puffing, he considers how his father earned the legendary title of hero during wartime. The boy grits his teeth as he contemplates the immense talents possessed by the 7 heroes. He visualizes the 7 legendary warriors who once stood together to save all of humanity. Reflecting on the past, he notes that his father was an integral part of that heroic group. He stares at his academic results, realizing he is perpetually stuck in second place behind Fiancé. Guards discuss the strict public evaluation, noting the magnificent talent found in other heroes' children. Earth suddenly interrupts with an apology, startling the knights who were casually critiquing his performance. He admits to the professional soldiers that he has shown them a truly pitiful display today. The knights attempt to console him, suggesting that losing to the princess is completely understandable. Feeling embarrassed, he ignores their lectures while thinking about his father's early victory at 18. Lord Hero suddenly appears, striking a confident pose while surprising everyone with his unexpected arrival. He instructs the knights to take care of his dumb son when he eventually enlists. Reacting with visible shock and disgust, Earth can hardly believe his father is standing there. Hero shares his own history of losing to Soya, but Earth bluntly tells him to shut up. Hero asks if Earth is truly content losing to a girl, triggering a look of intense annoyance from him. The legendary hero begins boasting about his wartime experiences alongside Earth's mother, worsening the boy's internal, silent frustration. Gazing down at his shoes, Earth laments that his father only cares about himself despite his son's obvious predicament. He desperately asks if receiving personal sword training from scratch would finally allow him to defeat the talented Princess Fiancé. Hero dismisses his son's request with a bright, insensitive laugh, claiming he is far too busy with official work. The boy's anger boils over as his father suggests learning from academy instructors or sadith instead of teaching him. During a lecture, Earth internalizes his resentment toward his father's neglect, and the standard academic topics they are taught. A childhood memory reveals him studying late into the night under a single lamp to meet society's heavy expectations. He recalls the endless hours spent training alone with a wooden sword, desperately struggling to improve his combat skills. Reaching out toward a silhouette of the princess, he laments his inability to ever defeat that perfect martial monster. Back in the present, Hero clenches a fist and tells his son to hang in there and grow slowly. Stunned by the remark, Earth realizes his father has never actually cared to watch his progress or hard work. Reaching his limit, he screams out in rage, questioning why he must be first and what is wrong with second. In a desperate plea, he shouts at his father's back, wishing for just the smallest bit of genuine heartfelt praise. A cold silence settles between them as Earth clicks his tongue in deep and bitter resentment toward his absent parent. He walks away through the school's stone corridors, rejecting any form of pity while feeling like a pathetic failure. The academy tower looms while the boy reflects on his own selfish and foolish behavior after his angry outburst. The scene shifts to the grand family mansion the following morning as the sun rises over the quiet estate. Returning home, Aerith calls out to Sadith while she peacefully waters the garden flowers under the bright morning sun. The maid welcomes him with a reminder that classes are in session and playfully commands him to return immediately. Earth arrives home to a warm welcome, his face heating up at the sight of his childhood companion. Yet the moment is quickly ruined as she mockingly orders her virgin master back to his academy classes. Left in a state of utter deadpan exhaustion, he can only stare blankly at her sharp and playful tongue. The family's personal maid, Sadith, continues her garden chores while radiating a composed and almost motherly grace. He recalls how his mother took her in as a war orphan, growing up together more like siblings. Despite her twisted and foul-mouthed personality, he secretly harbors a deep desire to eventually make her his wife. Attempting to save face, he blames his early return on academic fatigue while she mocks his fragile spirit. She immediately cuts through his excuses, bluntly asking if he suffered another demoralizing defeat against the princess today. He dismissively claims the matter was trivial, though his defensive body language betrays his true inner frustration. Boasting about his top-tier grades, he insists that his future as an imperial knight is already firmly secured. Sadith observes his sulking demeanor with a knowing look. Sensing the deeper source of his current emotional turmoil, she asks if he encountered his father, the legendary hero, during his time away from the mansion today. Clenching his jaw, he vents about the constant and suffocating comparisons to his father's unmatched heroic legacy. He admits to feeling like a perpetual disappointment to everyone who expects him to mirror his father's greatness. The maid unexpectedly acknowledges the unfair and truly unreasonable degree of expectation forced upon his young shoulders. She recalls that Hero himself actually struggled and often slacked off during his time at the Magic Academy. Contrasting their history, she points out that Earth has consistently achieved much better academic results than his father. She explains that people watch him because they hold genuine, warm-hearted dreams for his future growth and success. In a rare moment of tenderness, she tells him that he is truly precious to everyone around him. He realizes that despite her crafty and often twisted nature, Sadith is the one who truly supports him. Recalling his childhood, Aerith reflects on the profound support and bond that made him love Sadith. Back in the present, she mischievously offers a special reward for his best effort. Shocking him, the maid playfully promises to cook his childhood favorite omelet, finishing with a flirtatious little heart. Heading off, she teases her young master for being perverted while he shouts back in annoyance. Blushing furiously, the boy wonders if her playful antics will actually help brighten his gloomy mood. Sadith suddenly announces that it is finally time for the annual cleaning of the mysterious sealed room. She laughs while poking fun at his wandering adolescent imagination before heading toward the mansion's depths. A solitary candle flickers within a small alcove set into the cold, ancient brick of the walls. Several magnificent swords hang prominently on display against the aged stone of the inner storage vault. The maid departs to fetch more cleaning supplies, leaving Earth alone with the heavy equipment bags. She presents a large ring of iron keys, instructing him to visit the legendary blade alone. Laughing over her shoulder, she mockingly wishes him luck in trying to steal the heavy weapon. Earth walks down the dark, silent corridor, his heavy footsteps echoing against the cold cobblestone floor. Reaching the end, he stands before massive, double doors heavily bound by thick, overlapping iron chains. He reflects on the historical narratives of the Great War that ravaged these lands long ago. Memories of the legendary 7 heroes clashing against the terrifying Demon King's army resurface today. That conflict finally ended when his father used his magic sword to strike down the monarch. Following the victory, the legendary blade was placed upon a high pedestal behind this vault door. As a small child, Earth felt his heart race with pure excitement every time he saw it. Asserting that he is no longer that wide-eyed kid, he finally unlocks the heavy iron chains. Earth strains with all his might to push open the massive, creaking double doors of the inner vault. He gasps in absolute shock as he peers into the darkness, his eyes widening in pure terror. An elegant spectral woman with flowing white hair and large horns manifests within the silent chamber. The entity sighs with profound relief, noting that it has finally been a full year since then. Trembling with fear, the boy frantically questions the identity of the mysterious and powerful guest. She observes that the heavy doors have opened exactly 15 times since her long imprisonment began. Touching her horn, she realizes 15 years have passed while the boy notes her demonic features. The spirit remarks that this visitor is certainly not the maid who usually performs the annual cleaning. Her gaze narrows with recognition as she correctly identifies him as the legendary hero's own offspring. Earth grits his teeth in visible disgust, sensing an ancient and odious presence that feels strangely familiar. He bellows a demand to know her name and how she managed to bypass the vault's security. Confused by his aggression, she wonders if a robbery is occurring, but remains intrigued by his presence. The Phantom Queen manifests closer to the boy, questioning if he can actually perceive her spiritual form. Sadith enters the room and scolds him for being noisy, suspecting him of trying to steal the sword. He points a trembling finger toward the entity, frantically warning the maid about the strange intruder. Sadith stares directly at the empty air, claiming there is absolutely no one standing there with them. She mockingly suggests his lack of romantic experience is causing him to suffer from vivid and wild hallucinations. Dismissing his claims as a childish prank, she grips her mop to begin the scheduled cleaning chores. The maid eventually leaves to fetch more water, ignoring his desperate pleas for her to stay and help. The ancient monarch reflects on the peculiar reality that only this young child is capable of seeing her. Earth reacts in shock as he swings a heavy cleaning mop with all his might toward the ghost. The improvised weapon whistles through the air, highlighting the immense physical force behind his desperate and aggressive strike. Observing his failed attempt, the spectral queen watches the boy's clumsy movement with a critical and judgmental eye. Fueled by desperation, the young man unleashes a flash of thunder magic while continuing his frantic assault. Trainar scoffs at his display, claiming his imitation of the legendary magic sword technique is completely for naught. She compares his unrefined effort to Hero's true mastery, further wounding his pride with her cold assessment. Looking him in the eye, she declares that he is still far off from reaching true warrior status. Erupting in a fit of pure rage, Earth bellows for the entity to finally be quiet while lunging forward. He strikes again with all his strength, yet his physical weapon passes harmlessly through the monarch's intangible body. Turning her back to him, she labels his continued attempts to harm her as entirely and pathetically pointless. With a wicked grin, she clarifies that her spiritual form renders any physical assault completely useless and ineffective. Earth stands frozen in confusion, while the Phantom admits she hasn't spoken to a living soul in years. The atmosphere grows heavy as she prepares to formally introduce herself to the son of her enemy. She triumphantly reveals her name is Trainar, the very Demon King whom his father once famously vanquished. The revelation hits like a physical blow, leaving the boy trembling with shock at her true identity. Later, the ancient queen explains that shadow training and sparring are essential standard methods for physical training. She describes the difference between mock battles and imagining a potential enemy to sharpen one's reflexes. With a smug and excited expression, the Demon King officially names their new training method Phantom Sparring. Realizing the nature of the challenge, Earth confirms they will be engaging in a serious spiritual mock battle. A competitive grin spreads across the young master's face as he realizes this unusual arrangement should be interesting. Earth reflects on his lackluster school battles, where opponents were either too weak or the monstrously skilled princess. Though he acknowledges that other monstrous individuals surely exist beyond the safety of the academy's walls, he realizes that gauging true ability is impossible in a closed environment, leaving him with no practical experience. Thus, he finds the prospect of clashing with the actual Great Demon King to be an exhilarating challenge. Trainer lands gracefully, promising to fight fairly on the ground, while permitting him to utilize any magic necessary. Questioning the nature of their bout, the boy wonders if her spiritual form forces her to pretend to strike. With a confident and knowing smile, the spectral monarch prepares to demonstrate the true extent of her ancient power. She suddenly lunges forward with a terrifying expression, declaring her intent to take this encounter seriously. In a swift and brutal motion, her hand appears to pierce directly through his throat in a silhouette. The young master is frozen in absolute shock, his mind reeling from the phantom sensation of a fatal blow. He trembles uncontrollably while clutching his neck in panic, as Traynor calmly asks what could possibly be wrong. Completely overwhelmed by the mental pressure, his legs give out and he collapses onto the grass in defeat. She mockingly inquires if he truly felt his throat being pierced, despite her inability to touch him. Gasping for air, he realizes that the gruesome sensation was merely a vivid product of his own terrified imagination. The haunting image of his own death plays on repeat, a mental scar forged by her overwhelming killing intent. Even though his body feels no actual physical pain, his knees continue to shake with primal, deep-seated fear. The feeling of dying haunts his thoughts while Traynor asks if this minor pressure is truly his limit. The heavy burden of being the son of the hero flashes through his mind. Fueling a sudden, desperate resolve, he lunges at her once more. But she easily deflects his attack while labeling him an impatient, childish amateur. Bellowing in a fit of pure frustration, he swings his fist and demands she shut up while attacking again. While Earth focuses on his own strike, Traynor effortlessly maneuvers behind him to deliver a mocking counterattack. The spectral monarch unleashes a devastating high kick, emphasizing the massive gap in their raw physical capabilities. She halts his momentum by placing a single finger before his eyes, asking if his instincts detected the danger. Traynor chillingly warns that taking even one more step toward her would result in his immediate and certain death. Reeling from the intense pressure, the young man struggles to maintain his composure against her overwhelming presence. Determined to land a blow, Earth charges forward while shouting the name of his next specialized combat technique. A massive, intricate magic circle manifests in the air above the Demon King as she observes his desperate assault. Crackling thunder magic surges around the boy as he prepares to unleash a powerful and high-voltage electrical strike. He attempts a high-speed kick from her blind spot, believing her intangible form cannot possibly react in time. However, his foot connects with a glowing runic circle on the ground, triggering an unexpected and violent magical reaction. A colossal tremor erupts as Traynor counterattacks with a devastating earth-shattering move called the Kilo Heartquake. Earth stares at the resulting crater in disbelief, searching the settling dust for any sign of his spectral mentor. Looking upward, he realizes, with mounting dread, that she is hovering high above him, completely untouched by his effort. Diving back down, she mocks his predictable and straightforward tactics, despite his attempt to attack with more intelligence. The ancient queen explains that her earth magic holds a natural advantage over his thunder-based elemental techniques. Her expression turns pensive and shadowed as she reflects on the fundamental nature of their brief magical exchange. She clenches her fist, offering to provide him with a first-hand lesson in the true weight of demonic power. The Demon King looms over the trembling boy, forcing him to witness the terrifying magnitude of her ancient authority. In a sudden shift, Princess Fiancé is shown weeping silently, as if carrying a heavy, secret emotional burden. Finally, the princess sits alone on her grand canopy bed, reflecting on the moment she apparently fell asleep. Fiancé hides her blushing face in a pillow, processing the intense emotions stirred by today's encounters. She recalls the humiliating moment Earth was scolded in class, while everyone else watched in amusement. Drifting further back, the princess remembers her younger self sitting isolated at a large wooden desk. Peering through the window, she watched the world outside with a mixture of curiosity and longing. She vividly remembers seeing young Earth and his friends playing joyfully in the branches of a tree. A wide, bright smile lit up her face as she witnessed their carefree and unburdened happiness. Driven by a sudden impulse, she climbed out the window to pursue those dreams of freedom. Suddenly, a sharp knock at the door pulls her back into the quiet reality of her bedroom. A maid enters after receiving permission, interrupting the princess's private moment of deep and nostalgic reflection. the servant holds out a formal envelope, announcing that an official letter has just arrived for her. Fiancé stares at the mysterious correspondence with a look of genuine surprise and mounting curiosity. She takes the sealed letter into her hands, wondering about the identity and intent of the sender. Meanwhile, the afternoon sun shines over the academy grounds where training has finally come to an end. Earth lies sprawled on the grass, gasping for breath after his grueling session with the Demon King. Trainer hovers nearby with a smug grin, admitting that the first lesson was perhaps a bit much. She announces their new daily routine will include this intense sparring alongside his regular ladder training. The monarch emphasizes that she used only basic human physical techniques to dismantle his defenses so easily. Earth is haunted by the mental trauma of being relentlessly beaten and kicked throughout their mock battle. He reflects bitterly on his past complacency and the hollow comfort of always ranking in second place. Lying defeated, he finally acknowledges the staggering gap in power and his own profound weakness. Earth sits frustrated, recalling his father's heroic silhouette while processing his own crushing sense of failure. He mentions that his father fought Trainer in the past, acknowledging the shared history between them, reflecting on the final battle where the seven heroes united their strength to end the demonic reign. The boy admits that a real fight would result in his certain death after being pseudo-killed repeatedly. Trainer retorts that he truly knows nothing about the man his father used to be long ago. Earth sighs, lamenting that Hero is always too busy to ever provide him with any personal guidance. He complains that every face-to-face conversation inevitably turns into a lecture regarding his father's glorious past. The ancient monarch questions if he has ever truly listened to the meaning behind that proud boasting. Letting out a weary sigh of good grief, she watches the boy sit dejectedly upon the grass. She admits that from an outside perspective, Hero truly appears to be a quite detestable person. A flashback depicts the arduous and blood-soaked road Hero traveled to eventually defeat the great Demon King. While Traynor suggests he learn his father's story, Earth views Hero only as the source of his complex. Sitting alone, he confesses his deep hatred for the standard generational phrases adults always use to lecture him. He begins to wonder about the true anguish and experiences the previous generation of warriors actually faced. Traynor remains silent as Earth decides he wants to find out how humanity managed to win. Staring up at the bright sky, he resolves to uncover the secrets of the past for himself. The following day, the bustling town streets are filled with commoners going about their ordinary daily lives. Traynor mockingly calls him a spoiled rich kid after he complains that his legs feel very heavy. She yells his name while they discuss the slow pace of their current magical training regimen. The young master suddenly stops in his tracks as he spots a familiar blonde girl nearby. Earth calls out to fiancé at a local fruit stall, catching the princess completely off guard. The two exchange greetings, noting how rare it is for her to walk without a carriage. Questioning her lack of escorts, he asks about the object she is holding so tightly. She displays a completely empty cup, which only adds to his growing confusion regarding her behavior. While Traynor watches curiously, a nervous fiancée desperately tries to justify her presence at the marketplace. She claims to have heard rumors about the stall's juice, holding her cup up as proof. Blushing furiously with swirly eyes, she insists she hasn't been waiting there for him all morning. Despite the obvious ambush, they decide to walk to the academy together as the morning sun rises. A comfortable silence briefly settles between the childhood friends as they leave the busy market behind. Fiancé breaks the quiet, inquiring about his specific plans following their upcoming graduation from the academy. Looking away awkwardly, he admits he has nothing special in mind while she watches him intently. The princess reveals she has been doing a lot of deep thinking about their shared future lately. She notes that the graduation matches will serve as the official announcement of her royal succession. Nervously, she asks if he is truly aware of the deep feelings she harbors for him. He gives a casual, half-hearted confirmation, while his spectral companion looks on with utter disbelief. A flashback illustrates her lifelong burden of being groomed for the throne since she was a child. Earth internally contrasts her noble ambitions with his own much more perverse and shallow personal motivations. She brings up the previous day, specifically mentioning how he was staring at her during the lecture. When asked for confirmation, he nonchalantly admits to staring, much to the Demon King's extreme shock. Clutching her brooch, the princess's expression softens as she processes his seemingly straightforward and honest answer. Fiancé declares with fiery determination that she will emerge victorious in their upcoming and prestigious graduation match. promising to make a momentous public announcement to both Earth and the kingdom's citizens after the duel. Earth reflects on the combined strength of the legendary heroes who once stood united against the Demon King. The princess is taken aback when her childhood friend suddenly interrupts her with an apology and intense resolve. He fiercely proclaims that he will be the one to stand triumphant after their decisive and final battle. Recalling his burning desire to finally prove his worth to Sadith and everyone who doubts his true talent, he remains deeply focused on learning the hidden truths behind his father's arduous and legendary heroic journey. Clenching his jaw, the young master asserts that there is something he absolutely cannot afford to give up. Fiancé stands motionless, stunned by the sheer weight of the newfound determination clearly visible within his eyes. Earth suddenly becomes flustered, frantically asking if her previous vague words were actually meant as a confession. The princess reacts with intense embarrassment, while Earth internally panics about keeping his secret deal with Sadith hidden. She looks down shyly as the atmosphere between the two childhood friends becomes increasingly and painfully awkward. Recovering her dignity, she proposes that they fight wholeheartedly to determine who is truly the superior student. They exchange a knowing smile, mutually agreeing to push their limits during the high-stakes academy graduation match. Trainer watches the interaction with amusement, privately thinking that the two are certainly not aiming for the same thing. The spectral queen decides to remain silent, anticipating the entertainment. Their massive misunderstanding will surely provide later. Arriving at the academy gates, they encounter a group of students buzzing with excitement over someone's unexpected presence. A look of sudden realization washes over Earth's face as he remembers a person he had completely forgotten. A massive crowd of adoring fans is gathered around a tall, popular figure standing in the central courtyard. He stares at the spectacle, realizing that another major barrier now stands directly in front of him. A cheerful student returns to the academy with a loud greeting, while a tall, mysterious warrior watches silently. Earth and Fiancé are left speechless, realizing that multiple formidable barriers have suddenly appeared to block their path. The Grand Academy towers rise toward the morning sky, signaling the beginning of an intense and decisive new chapter. A nostalgic flashback depicts young Fiancé struggling to concentrate on her difficult lessons under her stern governess's gaze. She remains trapped within the confines of her study room, longing for the freedom found beyond the window glass. Hearing her name called from the courtyard, the curious young princess peers outside with a look of pure wonder. She daringly climbs out of the high window to escape her studies, despite her tutor's frantic and angry shouts. The energetic girl drops toward the ground, where her childhood friends watch her reckless and impulsive exit in shock. Her governess bellows from above, absolutely livid that the princess has once again abandoned her essential royal academic duties. Utilizing a small magical circle, young Fiancé floats down for a gentle landing, while her companions watch in amazement. The children gather together on the grass as the angry tutor approaches to scold them for their wild behavior. Young Aerith stands alongside his rivals, Fu and Rival, as they navigate the complexities of their early warrior training. The stern governess demands they stop distracting the princess, threatening to report their play to their legendary hero fathers. Earth defiantly raises a wooden stick, boldly claiming that their games are actually a vital form of heroic study. His stubbornness triggers a furious outburst from the tutor, who refuses to hand the princess over to such troublemakers. She scolds the boy harshly, asserting that his current attitude will never allow him to match his father's legacy. Young Fu ignores the lecture and proudly declares her goal to become the absolute best mage in the world. Following her lead, young Rival asserts that he will eventually stand as the world's most talented and elite swordsman. Not to be outdone, young Fiancé proclaims her own ambition to be recognized as the greatest lancer alive today. Earth raises his makeshift sword and vows to eventually surpass his father and become the world's strongest legendary hero. Young Earth and his friends are challenged by the maid Sadith to defeat her as training. Little Fiancé possessively clings to Earth while glaring at the maid with a fiery, jealous intensity. Reflecting on his youth, the present Earth recalls having absolute confidence in his own future power. He walks alongside the princess, unaware of the harsh and cruel reality that eventually awaited him. The young master spots a crowd while Trainer asks about the unfolding scene at the academy. He identifies the arriving students as fellow children of the 7 heroes and former childhood companions. Rival Janine, the academy's strongest student and son of a master swordsman, ignores his many admirers, Nearby, the cheerful Fumidai, son of a legendary mage, arrives with arms full of gifts. Fiancé notes that both boys have returned from their study abroad trip much sooner than expected. A ranking chart explains that Earth and Fu only went because the top-ranked princess declined. Trainar mockingly points out that Earth's trip was essentially a handout, which earns her a retort. The adorable Fu suddenly notices the princess and Earth approaching him through the dense school crowd. Both Fu and Rival greet the pair, their presence drawing even more attention from the students. Rival maintains a formal demeanor, while Fiancé insists that childhood friends need not use such titles. Fu cheerfully asks Earth if he has grown any stronger during their time apart from each other. The princess dismisses Earth's progress, claiming his routine attendance at lessons won't help him beat her. Fu begins to recount a series of unexpected complications that occurred during their recent travels abroad. A dramatic flashback shows Fu and Rival working together to suppress a group of fierce fire dragons. The students marvel at the shiny metal Fu proudly displays as a reward for their heroic success. Trainar observes the vast differences between the heroic heirs, while Earth grumbles in his own shadow. Students crowd around, eagerly begging Fu to demonstrate the incredible power he acquired during his year studying abroad. Playing coy, the modest mage feigns embarrassment while Trainar watches the growing spectacle with a sharp, calculating gaze. Eventually relenting to the pressure, Fu prepares to utilize the Academy's training dummies to showcase his newfound magical prowess. With a polite smile, he warns his classmates not to expect too much before commencing his high-level demonstration. Standing centered within 3 overlapping magic circles, the young prodigy begins channeling an immense amount of concentrated energy. A single flick of his fingers initiates the spell, signaling the start of a truly terrifying display of talent. A colossal torrent of flames erupts across the courtyard, far exceeding the scale of any standard low-level fire spell. Onlookers stare in absolute disbelief from the windows, paralyzed by the sheer magnitude of the destructive force unleashed before them. The massive inferno swirls violently, causing the audience to question if such power could even be classified as basic. As the smoke clears, a heavy silence falls over the shocked crowd as they process the display of raw strength. Sensing the awkward atmosphere, Fu nervously asks if his performance was disappointing, oblivious to the awe he actually inspired. The students suddenly erupt in wild cheers, praising the mage for his spectacular and mind-blowing mastery of elemental magic. Earth is visibly irritated by Fu's humble attitude, while rival Janin remains unimpressed by the entire flashy and loud spectacle. Crossing his arms, Rival coldly questions why anyone would find such a mundane amount of power even remotely surprising. The atmosphere turns tense as the swordsman prepares to deliver a harsh truth to his seemingly lagging childhood rival. He boasts that their year abroad granted them absolute power, far surpassing anything the Academy's regular curriculum could offer. Earth attempts to laugh off the sudden aggression, though the weight of Rival's words begins to sink in deeply. Rival challenges the boy's reliance on others' magic, questioning if Earth has any actual strength of his own. In a blur of blinding speed, the swordsman lunges forward before Earth can even register the impending lethal movement. The blade stops inches from his face as Rival chillingly asks if this display finally satisfies his lingering curiosity. Rival dismisses demonstrating his skills to Academy-level students, calling it a waste of his valuable time. He then asks Earth if he understands the true reason behind their early return from studying abroad. Rival explains that as heirs to the 7 heroes, they must inherit the legacy of their father's generation. Rival declares their intent to dominate the upcoming royal tournament and claim victory for their prestigious families. With a piercing gaze, the warrior asserts his goal to exceed the legendary heroes and gain worldwide recognition. This declaration leads to the revelation that he will dedicate this inevitable victory to a specific important person. Earth watches their retreating figures, painfully aware that he currently lacks the strength to compete with them. Despite the gap, Rival stands firm, declaring that certain matters simply cannot be allowed to go unchallenged. Turning his full attention toward the princess, Rival addresses her with a newfound and serious air of authority. Fiancé acknowledges his growth but insists that she has also accomplished much during their long time apart. The elite swordsman stares back with lethal intensity, refusing to surrender his claim to the ultimate victory. Looking directly at the princess, he uses her name with a weight that catches everyone present by surprise. Rival's resolve remains unshakable as he vows that this time, Defeat is an outcome he will not accept. In a dramatic gesture, the warrior drops to one knee before the princess to make a formal proposal. He asks for her permission to become a candidate for her hand in marriage after winning the tournament. Earth is left in a state of absolute wide-eyed shock at the sudden and completely unexpected romantic development. The surrounding female students squeal with delight, while Earth screams in disbelief at the unfolding courtyard drama. Fiancé becomes a blushing, stuttering mess as she struggles to find words for the public marriage proposal. Rival admits he has always viewed her as a friend while maintaining his composed and determined outward appearance. A childhood flashback shows Rival watching them, realizing long ago where the princess's heart truly resided. Rival continues his speech, reflecting on how things have changed up until now. While Earth is left completely baffled by the sudden and intense high-stakes declaration, observing that the world wouldn't complain about the union between two such elites. Yet floating behind him, Trainar bluntly labels the emotional display as nothing but pathetic. The Demon King challenges Earth's belief. Claiming Rival still lacks the power to win, Earth looks up at his mentor, questioning if she witnessed their truly impressive display. Though he admits internally that defeating these monstrous heirs currently seems entirely impossible, Trainar scoffs at the mention of dragons, dismissing such feats as minor child's play. She mocks the supposedly high-tier magic showcased earlier within the Academy's grand courtyard. They stand together in a cathedral as she compares human travels to her own experiences. Boasting of her past, the monarch describes slaying underworld kings with absolute ease. Earth reels at terms like Terra and Exa magic, concepts unheard of in his world. Trainar demands his absolute faith while sitting with an air of supreme, ancient confidence. She asks a piercing question about his true identity and the path he follows. With a wicked grin, she forces him to consider his future role as her disciple. Back in reality, Earth suddenly interrupts Rival's formal marriage proposal with a loud shout. He boldly declares his own intent to win, taking a massive and public risk. Trainar offers her guidance as the necessary price for this dangerous and devilish contract. She dares him to broadcast his goals, effectively cutting off any possible escape routes. Accepting the challenge, Earth prepares to announce his grand ambition to everyone present. Rival recognizes a familiar fire in Earth's eyes, noting that they both now share the same burning resolve. Staring back with equal intensity, Earth vows to overcome his own limitations and protect what he holds dear. The surrounding crowd of students erupts in wild cheers, shocked by the sudden and dramatic escalation between rivals. Earth reflects on the unexpected positive reaction, having originally anticipated only public mockery for his bold interference. Fiancé becomes a blushing mess, her mind spinning with the hope that she is his secret source of motivation. Fu stands caught in the middle, struggling to decide which of his two childhood companions he should support. Trainar watches the chaotic human interactions with a smug, knowing grin. Thoroughly enjoying the unfolding high school drama, the young master admits he will never get used to the heavy pressure of being in the spotlight. He remains deeply unsettled by Rival's piercing and persistent gaze, feeling the weight of the elite warrior's focus. Back in the classroom, the professor demonstrates the complex decomposition of mathematical expressions on the large blackboard. Trainar scoffs at the curriculum, questioning if such simple lessons truly suffice for the Empire's supposedly elite students. She continues her arrogant critique, dismissing the written expressions on the blackboard as an inefficient waste of time. Earth is left completely baffled by her ancient perspective, while she continues to mock the professor's simple lecture. The monarch explains that mastering the proper system allows one to execute incredibly fast and automatic mental calculations. Deciding that showing is better than explaining, she proposes that they begin acquiring a new form of magic. She instructs him to prepare a magic sigil, watching as he carefully scribbles the intricate design into his notebook. Earth concentrates deeply while reciting a complex incantation, attempting to master the advanced calculation magic his mentor provides. He successfully manifests a glowing magical sigil over his eye, inventing a peak-tier method for high-speed data processing. With his new power active, his pen moves in a blur, filling his parchment with rapid and perfect calculations. The great Demon King is left in genuine shock, watching her student master the advanced technique with ease. Answers suddenly manifest within Earth's notebook, leaving him stunned by the perfect and rapid results. He is completely bewildered by the phenomenon, while Trainar laughs at his visible confusion and shock. The ancient monarch details her specialized incantation that removes any need for tedious and manual calculations. She proudly reveals the name of her supreme and original mathematical magic, the legendary spell X-Scale. Trainer continues boasting about her high-level inventions, making Earth realize the upcoming graduation test will be trivial. Back in the lecture hall, the instructor selects Earth to solve a problem based on the day. He is ordered to write the answer on the blackboard, feeling the immense weight of the moment. Standing before the entire class, he prepares to demonstrate the true power of his demonic mentor's teachings. A magical sigil manifests over his eye, granting him absolute clarity as he sees the entire solution. The complex answer flows effortlessly through his hand, appearing on the board with perfect and stunning precision. His chalk moves in a blur, completing the difficult mathematical derivation with truly supernatural and inhuman speed. With the task finished, he makes a dramatic flourish that leaves his classmates watching in absolute awe. He boldly declares that there is nothing he doesn't understand. While Traynor smirks from the shadows, Earth smugly walks back to his seat, leaving the teacher staring at the board in complete disbelief. However, the instructor calls him back, suspicious about the total lack of any intermediate calculation steps. Both the young man and his spectral guide realize they may have made a massive academic oversight. Traynor admits her advanced methods might be too refined for this simple world while the bell tolls. Later that night, Earth closes his eyes and calls out to the silent monarch lingering nearby. He suddenly finds himself standing in a vast white void, questioning exactly where they have gone. The great demon king reveals with a wicked grin that they are now deep within his mind. Traynor explains her original virtual reality illusion magic, a spell capable of creating highly realistic, customized dreams. Realizing he is currently asleep, Earth questions if this vast white space is actually his own subconscious. Pointing at his spectral guide, the boy asks if her presence is also just a figment of his imagination. The monarch details how their souls are inextricably linked, allowing her to manifest within his internal mental world. Demonstrating her absolute control, she snaps her fingers to conjure a bouncy slime creature out of thin air. Earth finds himself standing among numerous slimes, finally accepting the surreal nature of this mental landscape they share. His mind immediately wanders toward erotic fantasies of Sadath, prompting a sharp rebuke from the ancient demon king. Traynor walks off while the young master struggles against the bizarre physical sensations created by his own mind. She issues a stern warning that the realistic precision of her illusion magic makes it dangerously and highly addictive. The spirit recounts a grim tale of a man who lost himself to dreams, leading to a kingdom's ruin. Returning to the physical world's limitations, she laments her inability to interact with objects using her spiritual body. Traynor begins concentrating her vast internal energy, preparing to demonstrate a technique far beyond standard human magical understanding. Earth watches in absolute terror as towering pillars of pure energy erupt around the demonic monarch's small frame. With a confident smirk, she explains she isn't casting magic but simply moving raw energy through the atmosphere. The hero's son trembles, realizing he has never even heard of such advanced manipulation of primal magical forces. Channeling her power into a single point, she begins to form a violent and rapidly spinning atmospheric vortex. A colossal white spiral of concentrated energy consumes the area, nearly blowing the terrified young man off his feet. She proudly announces her special move, the redundantly named Great Devil, Spiral Star Devil Spiral Break. Earth face palms in pure secondary embarrassment, finding the long and repetitive technique name to be incredibly lame. Ignoring his critique, Traynor continues to hold the massive swirling vortex of power with effortless and terrifying ease. Earth frantically apologizes, trying to backtrack after his accidental insult regarding the Demon King's seemingly lame technique naming. Shifting gears quickly, he shamelessly showers her with excessive praise to soothe her bruised and ancient ego. Meanwhile, the devastating force of the Great Devil Spiral continues to howl with a truly terrifying intensity. After the simulation ends, the boy collapses face down on the ground in a state of absolute exhaustion. He laments his near-death experience, while Traynor coldly notes her move is meant to literally shred opponents. The monarch commands him to stop moping on the floor and sit properly to begin their theoretical lesson. Settling into a conjured seat within the white void, Earth prepares to receive deeper knowledge of magical fundamentals. Trainer emphasizes the importance of being on the same page before they delve into advanced soul-binding techniques. She begins a lecture on magical reservoirs, explaining how energy is released and activated throughout the physical body. Using an illustration, the Demon King introduces the concept of magical holes and their influence on raw power. She employs a simple bag of water analogy to demonstrate how the number of holes determines magical output scale. However, she warns that possessing more holes results in much faster consumption of the user's energy reserves. Earth processes the harsh reality that lineage determines magical potential through the inheritance of these energy conduits. He reflects on the massive gap between his own modest reserves and the innate genius of his rivals. Looking toward his student, the ancient master asks how he intends to proceed given this inherent biological disadvantage. She shocks him by suggesting a method to simply increase the number of active magical holes he possesses. She details how latent potential can be awakened by unblocking the numerous conduits currently closed within his body. Leaping from his seat in absolute disbelief, Earth questions if such a miraculous alternative path truly exists. Traynor boastfully claims she used this very same secret method to empower her massive demon army long ago. With a sharp and focused look, the spectral monarch finally reveals the secret technique is ancient demonic acupuncture. Earth reacts with absolute horror as the concept of demonic acupuncture is finally revealed to him, staring down at a set of sharp needles laid out on the table by flickering candlelight. The boy skeptically questions if he truly must pierce his own flesh to gain forbidden power. Despite his concerns regarding safety, the ancient monarch insists that the procedure is perfectly fine. He spends his entire day off practicing his needle technique on a training pad under strict supervision. With a predatory and focused gaze, Traynor prepares to guide her student through the next stage. She explains that her specialized vision allows her to locate every dormant magical conduit in his body. However, the news that needles might be driven beneath his fingernails leaves him shouting in terror. Traynor tries to soothe his rising panic, reminding him that they will only open one hole today. Earth considers the overwhelming magic of his rivals while steeling his nerves for the incoming ordeal. Taking a deep breath, he finally prepares to drive the cold metal needle into his own arm. The sharp point pierces his skin, sending an immediate and sharp jolt through his entire system. Following her precise directions to move slightly to the right, he grits his teeth against the sting. He slowly pushes the needle deeper into his flesh, guided by the Demon King's ancient, steady voice. The spectral monarch announces he has reached the target as the metal finds its mark precisely. Earth lets out a choked gasp of shock when the needle finally connects with the hidden conduit. A blinding surge of agony erupts from the point of impact, causing the boy to scream aloud. He trembles violently from the unfamiliar sensation, his mind reeling from the intensity of the magical awakening. A mental vision of his entire arm being riddled with needles illustrates the depth of his suffering. Finally, he compares the agonizing sensation to being repeatedly stabbed by heated knives across his entire body. Traynor dismisses Earth's agony while he struggles with the intense sensation of his magical holes opening. Sadith opens the door to investigate the commotion as the Demon King issues a warning. Startled by the maid's entrance, the boy falls backward in his chair and completely loses consciousness. A wash basin resting on the table suggests that a period of feverish recovery has eventually followed. Slowly regaining his senses, Earth opens his eyes while sweating from the lingering effects of exhaustion. Traynor hovers nearby, asking if the young man has finally awakened after his difficult and painful ordeal. She explains that his body simply gave out from the intense pressure of bearing the magical hole. He then notices a girl's head resting right next to his bed, catching him off guard. He discovers Sadith peacefully asleep in a chair after spending the entire night tending to him. Moved by her care, he reflects on the fact that she has been protecting him this time. Waking up, he lets out a soft sound before realizing the precarious situation he is in. He suddenly has an unintentional and incredibly close view directly up Sadith's short, black uniform skirt. The sight of her intimate clothing sends the flustered boy into a state of immediate, frantic panic. His heart pounds against his chest as he agonizes over his own perverted and shameful nature. Blushing deeply, he attempts to reconcile his masculine desires with the respect he owes his caretaker. He resolves to act like a man, but finds his gaze drawn back to the forbidden view. His mind spirals as he guiltily considers taking just a quick peek at the prohibited sight. Suddenly, Sadith speaks up, mockingly commenting on his obvious and desperate obsession with her panties. She gives a mischievous wink, revealing she was actually awake and fully aware of his gaze. Finally, Earth reacts with pure horror as she scolds his deplorable behavior while he sits in bed. Sadith places her hand firmly on the bed, intensifying the pressure in the room with a playful gaze. She leans in close and tilts Earth's chin upward, while he remains a completely flustered, blushing mess. The maid continues her bold provocation, asking if the young master truly desires a closer look at her. Earth's face burns with embarrassment as she directly addresses his earlier perverted curiosity regarding her short skirt. She whispers right against his ear, suggesting a level of intimacy that goes far beyond his wildest imagination. Suddenly, the bedroom door is kicked open with a loud crash by an energetic and very worried woman. Mama Ragan lunges into the room, announcing her intention to immediately cast powerful and restorative high-level magic. The War Maiden stops dead in her tracks, her expression shifting to absolute shock at the scene. Sadith laughs off the encounter while a terrified Earth is caught in an incredibly compromising and shameful position. A loud, frantic scream echoes from the mansion into the night air under the bright full moon. Mama looms over the pair with a dark aura, her voice trembling with a mixture of mounting rage. She begins scolding her son quite physically while Sadith explains she was merely playfully teasing her master. The maid chuckles behind her hand, clearly enjoying the chaotic turn of events while Earth continues to suffer. Traynor observes the gathered elites, noting the impressive lineage of the 7 heroes currently present in the room. The legendary war maiden Mamu Ragan appears deeply flustered, her usual heroic composure shattered by her son's behavior. While the Demon King notes her appearance, Earth makes a very disrespectful mental observation about his mother's age. Sensing his rude thoughts, Mamu delivers a lightning-fast slap that sends her son reeling across the bed. He clutches his throbbing cheek in pain, frantically asking why she hit him while she accuses him of insolence. Lord Hero suddenly enters the room, questioning why everyone is gathered here instead of attending to their duties. Sadith cheerfully claps her hands together, announcing that the entire ordeal has left her feeling quite hungry. Mamu Ragan asks if she should prepare dinner for everyone, and Earth agrees that it sounds great. Sadith cheerfully offers to help with the cooking, allowing the 2 women to head off together. Earth reflects on the long years that have passed since he last shared a kitchen with Sadith. Deep within the silent white void of his mind, the boy stands opposite his father's imposing image. A profound and heavy silence stretches between them, while the boy struggles to find his voice. Overwhelmed by the direct confrontation, he realizes just how incredibly awkward it feels to stand there. He suddenly shouts in frustration, questioning how a decent conversation could possibly happen after their recent history. Traynor intervenes, reminding her disciple that he had a specific question he wanted to ask the hero. The boy contemplates the hidden details of his father's past while gazing at the warrior's back. Turning toward the silent phantom, he prepares to finally uncover the truth behind his father's career. He directly asks Hero what specific reason led him to eventually become an elite Imperial Knight. The legendary hero is visibly startled by the sudden and very unexpected question from his young son. Hero notes that it is about time the boy decided on his own career course for graduation. Earth looks upward thoughtfully, remembering the core reason he first chose the path of a warrior. His mind drifts back to a time when he simply wanted to protect his precious family and friends. A traumatic memory of monsters nearly obliterating his mother and his beloved hometown suddenly resurfaces today. He recalls the horrific sight of devastated fields and innocent neighbors being eaten alive by feral beasts. Within the flashback, the young boy and his mother huddled together as giant, hungry wolves close in. He recognizes that death was certain until a mysterious individual appeared to save them at the last second. A cloaked figure walks away in silence after effortlessly defeating the monsters, appearing as a true hero. Earth continues his flashback, remembering his childhood desire to become an ally of justice just like that hero. Hero smiles and asks if such a motive is too simple for his son to accept. The boy admits it was a childish and perhaps slightly reckless dream he once held quite dear. Thinking to himself, he recognizes this event as the true origin of his father's path as a knight. While the women peek through the door, Earth reflects on the weight of his father's fulfilled childhood dream. Despite its simplicity, Hero followed through with his ambition, eventually defeating the Demon King and ending the war. The family enjoys dinner together, a peace protected by the very deeds Hero accomplished years ago. Sitting in the center of the table, Earth remains deep in thought while the others chat cheerfully. He prepares himself to voice his own conviction, his arm tensing with a sense of internal resolve. He formally announces his goal to win the upcoming graduation match, shocking the room with his sudden declaration. Mamu and Sadith are left momentarily speechless by the young master's unexpected and extremely bold proclamation. Breaking the silence, Mamu excitedly calls out to Hiro to ensure he heard his son's courageous words. The war maiden enthusiastically pledges her absolute support to help her son achieve his new and challenging goal. However, she tells him not to regret losing, as simply having the fighting spirit makes his father happy. Earth is struck by her words, realizing with bitter disappointment that his family doesn't actually expect him to win. His mother continues to laugh while treating his serious ambition as nothing more than a valiant but futile effort. He observes their dismissive reactions, feeling the crushing weight of their low expectations despite his desperate desire for victory. Eating his meal in a somber silence, he reflects on the years of effort that everyone chooses to ignore. Sadith notices his sudden change in mood, calling out to him with a look of genuine concern and confusion. Finally, he leaves the table prematurely, claiming he feels unwell while hiding his deep-seated frustration and hurt pride. Irth thanks his family for the meal before abruptly leaving the dinner table. Clearly upset and frustrated, Traynor watches the boy walk down the dark hallway, sensing the deep pain and resentment within his heart. In the mental void, the Demon King asks if he is truly okay after the family dinner. Irth calls out to his mentor, his voice trembling with a mixture of raw emotion and newfound resolve. Screaming into the emptiness, the boy demands that the monarch use her ancient power to make him stronger. With tears streaming down his face, he begs to be turned into a warrior capable of absolute victory. He declares his readiness to endure any grueling training or painful acupuncture required to achieve his goals. Crying out his frustrations, he vows to prove his worth through action rather than just empty, hollow words. Traynor looks upon her disciple with a solemn expression, acknowledging his passionate and desperate plea for strength. Earth reacts with shock when his mentor suddenly mentions that the next 2 days are academy holidays. The ancient monarch explains that overtraining is counterproductive, especially considering the physical burden of his recent awakening. She hints at a mysterious event occurring tomorrow, leaving the young master feeling quite confused and curious. Traynor discovers a poster for her favorite book series anniversary, her demonic composure completely vanishing in excitement. The pair decides to set aside their training for 1 day so the monarch can indulge herself. Back at dinner, Mamu excitedly calls out to Hiro, oblivious to her son's internal and emotional turmoil. Earth remains lost in his thoughts, wondering why his own family treats his serious ambition like a joke. Feeling completely alone and misunderstood at the table, he sinks further into a deep, silent state of depression. A flashback reveals Mamu reflecting on the most agonizing day of her life during the Great War long ago. The massive estate stands silent under the moon as Earth calls out for Sadith in his memories. Young fiancé stands by with a broom, her eyes fixed on the boy while another child watches them. A sudden flashback reveals a woman's shocked face as she hears the wails of a crying child. Reflecting on the profound joy of holding a tiny newborn hand for the very first time. Shifting back to the present, the boy stands outside a shop while the clerk prepares a delivery. Though exhausted, he begrudgingly pays for the sequels that the Demon King has been desperately anticipating. Realizing the sheer volume of books requires him to rent a cart just to transport them all, Traynor points excitedly toward a nearby park, demanding they start reading her favorite series immediately. They eventually find a quiet bench where the spectral monarch hovers with pure, unbridled enthusiasm. She laughs with delight at finally acquiring the entire collection, while the boy looks on with boredom. He questions her love for human culture, given that humanity was responsible for her eventual demise. She dismisses his concerns, arguing that accepting superior technology is the true secret to any civilization's growth. Settling in, the Demon King commands him to sit and act as her personal page-turner. She leans over his shoulder, her eyes darting across the text as he begins to read aloud. The monarch suddenly interrupts him, her voice dripping with irritation at his agonizingly slow reading speed. She shouts for him to turn the pages faster, leaving the poor boy completely stunned and confused. While a couple relaxes nearby, she boasts about reading the same passage 5 times in mere seconds. Feeling useless, he suggests she just read at her own pace while he rests on the bench. However, she insists he read it all so they can properly discuss every detail together later. Realizing his limitations, the Demon King decides she must personally teach him the art of speed reading. She gazes into his eyes, preparing to explain the fundamental secret behind her superhuman perception skills. With an intense and predatory stare, she reveals that true mastery begins with perfecting one's visual acuity. Earth looks deeply puzzled as Trainar begins emphasizing the vital role of visual acuity in their training. Shortly after, she clarifies that this concept specifically encompasses both dynamic visual acuity and peripheral vision. She continues by explaining that dynamic acuity is the ocular power to track moving objects with speed. While the boy skeptically questions if this entire lesson is merely about improving his reading skills, Trainar sharply retorts that mastering these basic functions forms the foundation for his future combat potential. Pondering her words on the bench, he begins to realize how tracking movement influences his overall perception. She further illustrates that applying this heightened awareness allows a warrior to effortlessly evade lethal enemy strikes. Acknowledging the practical applications, Earth realizes that such a refined skill is indeed invaluable during actual combat. Shifting her focus, the Demon King commands him to observe a couple sitting at a distance yonder. As the pair shares a romantic moment, the boy expresses his irritation while his mentor watches calmly. She abruptly orders him to return his gaze, demanding his full attention for the next part of the lesson. Suddenly peppering him with specific questions about the surroundings, she tests his natural ability to notice details. The student admits he failed to see anything beyond the couple, confirming Trainar's expectations about his focus. The monarch explains that true peripheral vision captures the entire landscape without ever narrowing onto one spot. In a fight, perceiving the opponent as a whole allows a warrior to read movements and take initiative. Staring intently at the open pages, he understands that even his natural eyesight can be systematically trained. The ancient ruler finally reveals that the official name of this legendary visual technique is Kanan Nikon. Repeating the name with a serious expression, Earth feels the significance of the ancestral power being shared. He realizes that combining these specialized visual exercises with his physical training is rapidly sharpening his reflexes. Finally relenting, he apologizes for his previous mockery and eagerly asks his master for the next step. Trainar sets a staggering goal of finishing the entire cart of books by day's end, brooking no dissent as she forces Earth into a specialized eye training regimen. Although the boy internally contemplates the risks of trusting such an ancient being, his mind wanders back to memories of Sadith as a small, playful child. Recalling her life in a humble hometown where she often caused mischief, she was a spirited girl who frequently hid from those searching for her, often seen dashing through the streets while her mother chased her in vain, cherishing those fleeting moments of pure happiness before the darkness arrived. Yet he wonders what tragic events truly transpired within the shadows of that city, leaving him searching for answers without fully grasping the scope of the secret, leading to a horrific discovery within the pipes of the Shisonotami underground facility, where an injured researcher reveals forbidden magic capable of obliterating entire continents. Trainar expresses her disgust toward humanity's reckless pursuit of such devastating power, while the dying man clings to the art as their final hope for victory. However, the Demon Queen exposes his desperate justifications as nothing but hollow lies, revealing the Empire's true plan to use the magic as a weapon of aggression. Finding no value in such treacherous tools or the records of secret meetings, she acknowledges that even her own demon army cannot safely wield this power. And with a look of cold determination, she vows to eradicate the key person. As young Sadith runs toward a future forever changed by the great Demon King's intervention, young Sadith stares in horror as the word demon echoes through her mind. A catastrophic devil spiral suddenly obliterates her entire peaceful hometown in a blink. She drifts into a dark void, completely overwhelmed by the sudden and absolute silence. Waking in a cold sweat, the traumatic memory continues to haunt her every waking step. Panting heavily while cleaning the grand mansion, she struggles to catch her breath. Her heart races painfully as she desperately tries to suppress the resurfacing mental trauma. The terrifying vision of the destructive vortex flashes before her inner eyes once more. Clutching her mouth in a sudden wave of nausea, she fights back the tears. Leaning against the cold hallway wall, she realizes she is slowly losing her composure. She rushes down the long, silent corridor, searching for her own secret sanctuary of comfort. Reaching for a door handle, she desperately seeks an immediate escape from her dark thoughts. Entering the room, she finds herself surrounded by dozens of portraits of her young master. Her gaze settles on a childhood picture of Earth, her breathing finally starting to steady. Blushing intensely, she admits her secret obsession helps mend her deeply scarred and roughened heart. She recalls the fateful day Mamu heroically saved her from certain death during the war. Mamu fought fiercely for her, eventually promising to raise the lonely orphan girl like a sister. They shared countless joyful moments together, bound by a deep and very genuine familial love. Though slightly saddened by Mamu's wedding to Hiro, she chose to always remain by their side. Hiro gently pats her head, a simple, kind gesture that offered her a sense of belonging. He officially accepted her as an adopted child, providing her with a new family and home. After some time passes at the grand mansion, a voice calls out to Sadiath, breaking her deep reverie. A nostalgic memory surfaces of being offered the chance to hold a tiny, newborn baby for the first time. She gazes down at the peacefully sleeping infant, marveling at the fragile new life within her arms. Seeing young Earth's innocent face, she feels a profound sense of responsibility and affection take root. The baby lets out a joyful cry, and she embraces him as her precious brother, not related by blood. Having lost her own family, she desperately wished for this peaceful new life to continue on forever. Returning to the present, Sadith opens a decorative wooden box filled with various trinkets and heartfelt mementos. She chuckles softly while handling a familiar ribbon, reflecting on the many cherished memories she has collected. A flashback shows a young, blushing Earth presenting a beautiful bouquet during her own academy graduation ceremony. The boy tearfully asks if she intends to leave the family now that her schooling has finally concluded. Seeing his troubled expression from that day, she admits to herself that he has always been precious. She confesses her hidden desire to tease and bother him just to see his adorable, frustrated reactions. Regardless of his growth, he will always remain her young master within her devoted and loving heart. They spent their childhood days playing together, forging a bond that transcends their roles as master and servant. However, her expression turns somber as she contemplates the heavy expectations placed upon the young hero's son. Closing the box firmly, she decides that dwelling on these complicated feelings will not lead to anything good. She recognizes that Earth is destined to face Princess Fiancé as a rival in the upcoming graduation match. While society assumes the children of the legendary heroes will eventually marry and unite their prestigious bloodlines, she reflects on the grand wedding of Hiro and Mamu, realizing history is poised to repeat itself once again. Ultimately, she resolves to simply watch over their inevitable union from the sidelines like the rest of society. Sadith waters the roses in the garden while lost in her own private and melancholy thoughts. Remembering how young Earth once bravely presented her with a bouquet against strict social norms, she stands alone by the table, pondering the complex depth of their long-standing relationship, secretly smiling as she decides to keep her true, complicated feelings hidden from her young master. Suddenly, Earth returns home, dragging a heavily loaded cart through the main mansion gates. Sadith welcomes him back, immediately noticing his visible exhaustion in the massive hall of books. Her concern grows as she observes his eyes twitching uncontrollably from the intense visual training. While she continues her work, a sudden gust of wind catches her skirt quite unexpectedly. Her heart skips a beat in alarm as she realizes she is in a compromising position. She worries about the scandalous view being presented to her young and impressionable master. Earth pauses as his sharpened senses detect something unusual happening right before his very eyes. Using his enhanced visual acuity, he lightning fast catches her scarf before it can flutter away. He hands it back with a casual smile, leaving the maid feeling completely stunned by his speed. Announcing his plans to study until dinner, he heads inside while Sadith watches him thoughtfully. She reflects on his unexpected gentlemanly behavior while he hauls his equipment away alone. Wondering if the boy she knew is undergoing a profound and sudden internal change, Sadith realizes with a blush that his new ocular ability allows him to see everything before him. Trainer scolds her disciple, reminding him that ancient techniques aren't meant for peeking at maids. Regardless of his perverted tendencies, the Demon King acknowledges his surprisingly high latent potential. She concludes that his rapid progress is truly unexpected and may lead to eventual greatness. Earth continues his journey, marking the start of a great and truly legendary demonic evolution breakthrough. The narrative shifts forward as a countdown reveals there are only 49 days until the championship. Trainer repeats the name of the ocular technique, Canon Nikon, while staring intensely into Earth's eyes. He playfully poses with a camera, while Sadith looks on with a look of pure confusion. Night falls over the Grand Academy building, signaling the start of a new chapter in training. Earth stands alone under the bright moonlight, contemplating the immense power he is starting to manifest. He gazes down at his hand, sensing a foreign yet exhilarating energy flowing through his entire body. Suddenly, a pillar of pure magical energy erupts from his palm, illuminating the dark evening sky. Trainor watches with a smug grin, acknowledging that he can now control magical power quite stably. She praises his growth while the boy remains focused on the swirling energy surrounding his frame. Earth reflects on the agonizing pain he endured while opening his hidden conduits through demonic acupuncture. He successfully materializes magic across his arm, though he admits the process still takes significant effort. The Demon King asks for his impression of the experience, while the moon hangs high above. Closing his eyes, the young master breathes a sigh of relief and admits it feels fantastic. He marvels at the clarity of his senses, noting that everything he sees and hears feels natural. Preparing for one final bout, he swings his arm to gather more concentrated magical energy once again. With a sharp and determined gaze, Earth declares the beginning of their final intensive sparring session. Trainer smiles wickedly, ready to push her disciple to his absolute physical and mental limits tonight. He lunges forward with an explosive burst of speed, slamming his foot down hard into the earth. Earth continues his phantom sparring, realizing he is essentially fighting an intangible, ethereal spirit. His attacks pass harmlessly through her form, leaving him with no sensation of making contact. Meanwhile, the intense training focuses on reaching the highest levels of superhuman visual acuity together. Through this specialized ocular discipline, he finally learns to determine exactly when and where a strike will land. Although he previously feared death, he stands firm and prepares to face his ghostly mentor without any hesitation. Suddenly spotting a minuscule gap in the Demon King's defense, he prepares to unleash a decisive counterattack. He lunges forward with all his strength, forcing the ancient monarch to let out a surprised gasp. However, the massive gap in their raw power remains, leaving the young master gasping for breath once more. Eventually collapsing onto the grass, he laments his total inability to land a meaningful physical blow. The spectral queen hovers above him, forcing him to witness yet another vivid vision of his own demise. She praises his improvement despite his failure to cause any damage, while he wallows in deep frustration. Fueled by a burning desire for victory, he demands another round as the moon hangs high above. The night deepens over the Grand Academy, signaling a brief pause in their grueling and endless training. Back in his room, the boy calls out to the silent monarch lingering in the shadows nearby. Lying in bed, he asks the former tyrant the ultimate question regarding her desire to destroy humanity. Trainer remains evasive while questioning his sudden interest in a past that has long since vanished. She admits that her true motivations are likely beyond the comprehension of ordinary, short-lived humans. Her mind drifts back thousands of years to a cold, dark cave deep within the Earth's bowels. She recalls her home as a chaotic underworld where only stagnant air and mindless violence reign supreme. Looking toward a distant light, the young monarch embraced a dream to finally leave that wretched demon realm. Trainer recalls her ancient dream of exploring varying cultures, vast oceans, and verdurous forests under the warm sun. However, that dream was not easily attained as other demons also yearned to leave their dark realm behind. Before realizing it, she ascended to the throne, becoming the legendary and widely feared Great Demon King herself. Back in the present, Earth lies in bed, listening intently to the former monarch's somber and reflective tale. She wonders about the current state of her old realm after so many long and difficult years away. The boy asks if humans were cruel to demons, to which she replies that such behavior was the norm. Trainer explains that war inevitably breeds a cycle of raids and retaliation, where both sides commit truly immoral acts. Earth processes the harsh reality that even the terrifying Demon King was once a victim of wartime cruelty too. Despite the risks, the young master expresses a sudden desire to eventually visit the demon realm one day. Catching his mentor off guard, he suggests returning the favor by taking her to see the outside world. He confesses his own wish to see many countries, prompting a skeptical but amused smirk from the spirit. Reflecting on his lineage, he notes that following his father as an imperial knight would provide a stable life. Trainor counters by pointing out that such a rigid career would never allow him the freedom he desires. The boy finally accepts the profound truth that he does not need to follow his father's heroic path. He smiles warmly, admitting that her original wish to experience the entire world sounds like a lot of fun. Declaring his independence, he vows not to remain trapped within the confines of the single country forever. Reaching toward the ceiling, he pledges to grow stronger so he can survive and thrive in this vast world. His internal monologue builds toward a final resolution as he prepares to define his own unique future identity. With only one day remaining before the decisive match, he resolves to become a man who goes anywhere. The morning sun rises over the bustling city streets as carriages begin their daily routes through the capital. A massive, roaring crowd fills the stadium as Traynor observes the high-stakes atmosphere of the graduation tournament. Sitting alone in the dim waiting area, Earth settles his nerves while preparing for the upcoming trials. The spectral monarch notes the unexpectedly large audience gathered to witness the children of the seven heroes fight. Tightening the bandages around his fist, the boy acknowledges that today's performance will be judged by the elite. Traynor relishes the pressure, declaring this grand stage the perfect situation for her disciple to demonstrate his growth. An official announcement suddenly blares across the arena, commanding the immediate attention of every spectator in attendance. Pillars of light descend upon the central field as the grand ceremony officially commences with magical fanfare. Standing at the center, the announcer welcomes everyone to the Imperial Knights Academy's prestigious graduation commencement tournament. Princess Fiancé and the elite swordsman rival maintain a stoic, serious demeanor while waiting for the first draw. Nearby, the mage Fu and Earth steel their resolve, ready to face whatever challenges the lottery presents them. The participating students form a neat line in the middle of the vast arena under the watchful eyes. The stadium erupts in a deafening cacophony of cheers and support for the Academy's most popular young warriors. Sitting within the royal box, the legendary heroes Hiro and Mamu observe the proceedings with quiet, parental pride. From the stands, Sadith waves enthusiastically and screams her support for her young master with genuine excitement. The Master of Ceremonies explains that the matches will follow a traditional tournament format to determine the victor. Students begin stepping forward to draw their combat assignments, each hoping for a favorable path to the finals. Fiancé takes her turn at the lottery box, her expression turning sharp as she receives her designated matchup. A heavy silence falls over the crowd as the announcer prepares to call the very first combatant. Rival Janine strides confidently into the spotlight, triggering another massive wave of adoring screams from his fans. The talented warrior stands with a dignified stance, rumored to already possess the strength of an active knight. Earth observes the crowd's biased expectations while the drawing for the first round matches finally begins. Rival Janine steps forward to the lottery box, his calm demeanor hiding his formidable warrior spirit. He pulls out the first lot, confirming his position in the opening match of the prestigious tournament. The stadium erupts with excitement as fans celebrate getting to see their favorite prodigy fight so early. The announcer calls Earth's name next, prompting the young master to walk toward the center stage. Hushed whispers and mocking mutters fill the air as he approaches the lottery box under heavy scrutiny. Cruel silhouettes label him a second-generation failure, questioning if he can ever live up to Hiro's legacy. Despite the public's low expectations, a few onlookers wonder if the boy might actually be a dark horse. Traynor hovers nearby, mischievously asking her disciple if he is already conspiring a secret winning plan. She laughs at his stoic expression while he internally questions her definition of a conspiracy. Looking down at the box, Earth anticipates that this drawing will soon become very interesting for everyone. He lets out a quiet chuckle that startles the announcer as he prepares to make his choice. Reaching into the box with his bandaged hand, he focuses his senses on the shifting lots inside. Fiancé watches in stunned disbelief as Earth confidently pulls a ball from the chaotic lottery box. His eyes sharpen with unnatural clarity, signaling the activation of his newly acquired and powerful ocular technique. Utilizing the legendary Canon Nikon, he tracks the movement of every lot with absolute and terrifying precision. In a blur of speed, he snatches the specific lot that will determine his immediate fate today. Grinning wildly, he reveals his choice and confirms he will face rival in the very first round. A heavy, stunned silence falls over the entire arena as the impossible matchup is officially confirmed. The crowd erupts in outrage, questioning if the failure truly knows his place against such a monster. Hiro facepalms in frustration, calling Earth an unrefined idiot for his sudden and reckless actions. Rival Janine lashes out at Earth, accusing him of trying to ruin this prestigious historic game. Earth remains completely calm, holding the lot while asking why he would ever do such a thing. Rival grits his teeth in rage, shouting that Earth surely understands the weight of this tournament. He realizes with a shock that Earth actually saw the lottery number in a split second. A heavy silence hangs between the two rivals as the tension reaches a breaking point. Finally reaching his limit, Rival bellows his acceptance across the entire packed and roaring stadium. Earth boldly declares war on his rival, which the swordsman accepts with a terrifyingly sharp gaze. The panicked announcer desperately pleads for the crowd to remain calm amidst the rule-breaking chaos. Princess Fiancé watches from the sidelines, her face pale with shock as the situation escalates rapidly. Suddenly, the authoritative voice of Emperor Solya booms through the arena, demanding absolute and total silence. Rival is momentarily taken aback by the overwhelming presence of the legendary Magic Spear Knight. The Emperor stands tall, his imposing silhouette casting a long shadow over the nervous and stunned students. Solya coldly points out that Earth's manipulation of the lottery is a direct violation of Academy rules. Turning his attention toward Rival, the monarch asks for confirmation regarding his acceptance of the challenge. Rival immediately drops to one knee, showing deep respect while confirming his intent to fight Earth. Rising with newfound fire, the warrior vows to win the championship and crush every opponent before him. Earth gives a satisfied smirk, noting that the order of their inevitable clash is now finally decided. Fiancé looks on with a complicated expression, hoping that Earth manages to survive his difficult upcoming match. Hiro and Mamu express their concern, while Emperor Solya remains unmoved in his stern and final royal judgment. Emperor Solya lectures Hiro and Mamu about the importance of accepting their young son's bold and public challenge. Standing on the balcony, the Emperor officially allows the match while praising Earth's truly fierce fighting spirit. The announcer declares that this upcoming battle is far more significant than a standard, simple graduation exercise. Princess Fiancé watches in mounting worry as the event is reclassified as a formal duel between warriors. Intense close-ups reveal the contrasting expressions of Earth and Rival as the first round is officially acknowledged. Earth looks back with a faint, confident smile, while preparing to prove everyone's biased expectations completely wrong. He reflects on the annoying phrase regarding his lineage that has haunted his entire life until today. He feels his personal efforts are constantly dismissed because people only see him as Lord Hero's son. Standing in the arena, he laments that society only sees an ideal hero instead of his true self. The focus shifts back to the intense and high-stakes standoff between the two rivals on the field. Hiro and Mamu stand beside the Emperor, watching their son prepare for a battle that defies conventions. The faces of Earth's family and friends are filled with visible anxiety over his sudden, reckless move. A wide view of the vast stadium shows Earth and Rival standing far apart across the dirt. The announcer bellows that the first round of the prestigious graduation tournament will finally begin very shortly. Rival Janine is introduced as the top student of the sword division and son of a master. Earth Reagan is announced as another heroic heir and the mysterious dark horse of this entire tournament. Fiancé watches nervously as the crowd whispers about the tension and drama that occurred during the lottery. Onlookers note that the match has oddly become a decisive battle between the hero's second-generation children. Trainer hovers behind her disciple, asking if he plans to utilize the specialized demonic techniques she taught. Earth stands ready, deciding he wants to test his own raw power first before using his secret skills. Earth reflects on the grueling training that sharpened his martial arts, visual acuity, and reflexes for this moment. Observing his student's newfound resolve, Traynor wears a knowing and distinctly smug expression. The young master takes a final glance back as he strides toward the center of the arena. Among the massive crowd, Sadith watches with a deeply concerned and anxious expression on her face. He suddenly bellows a command for her to witness the results of his intense training firsthand. Clutching her fist tightly, the maid prays for his eventual victory despite the overwhelming odds. Her heart skips a beat as she frantically screams for him to wait before the match starts. A wave of confusion sweeps through the stadium when everyone realizes Earth is missing his sword. He remains unbothered while reflecting on his original path as a swordsman under his father's legacy. Princess Fiancé is left completely speechless. Questioning if her childhood friend actually forgot his weapon, the spectators mockingly whisper about his perceived incompetence. Assuming his nerves finally got the best of him, Emperor Solya erupts in a fit of pure rage, his voice echoing across the wide tournament field. The monarch demands he return for his blade, but Earth simply remains calm and silent. He dismisses the announcer's frantic question with a blunt refusal that shocks the entire gathered crowd. Grinning with confidence, he raises a bandaged hand and declares his fist shall serve as his blade. The stunned official can only stammer in response to the boy's unprecedented and reckless declaration. Rival Janane stares back with cold, narrowing eyes, clearly insulted by his opponent's unconventional approach. Thus, the announcer finally signals the beginning of the tournament's most anticipated first-round match. A sharp metallic sound rings out as the elite swordsman unsheathes his weapon with lethal intent. Pointing his blade forward, Rival warns that this high-stakes duel is certainly not meant for playing around. Rival charges forward with lethal intent, vowing to beat some sense into his seemingly defenseless opponent. The elite swordsman swings his blade downwards with terrifying force, aiming directly at the young master's head. Meanwhile, adoring fans within the crowd erupt in a chorus of cheers for their favorite golden prodigy. Princess Fiancée watches in absolute horror, her voice echoing through the stadium as she screams Earth's name. The arena falls into a stunned silence when something completely unexpected occurs right before the spectators' eyes. Rival stands completely frozen in disbelief, realizing his supposedly perfect strike somehow managed to miss its target. Looking back with wide eyes, the warrior notes that Earth actually avoided the attack with effortless grace. Fueled by growing frustration, Rival launches a relentless follow-up strike, demanding his opponent finally face him. He unleashes the Imperial sword art, Blooming Turbulence, a flurry of high-speed slashes surrounding the hero's son. Professional knights watching from the stands marvel at the display, unable to even track the lightning-fast movements. One soldier gazes in absolute shock, sensing that something unnatural is happening within the center of the arena. Utilizing his trained visual acuity, Earth navigates the web of blades without receiving a single scratch. The young master predicts every coming action by reading the minute muscle movements of his aggressive opponent. Combining superhuman perception with reflexes honed from ladder training, he dodges every lethal slash with perfect timing. This breathtaking display serves as the ultimate culmination of the grueling training he endured with his mentor. Rival realizes with mounting dread that this isn't hero's swordsmanship, but Earth's own unique combat style. In a blur of movement, Earth unleashes the great demon corkscrew blow directly into the prodigy's face. The powerful impact sends Rival reeling backward, his composed facade finally shattered by a single devastating punch. The crowd of adoring female fans screams in pure terror at the sight of their champion being struck. The announcer bellows in disbelief as Earth successfully lands a clean hit on the Academy's top-ranked warrior. Rival reels from the blow, struggling to understand how Earth successfully dodged his every legendary sword technique. Earth stands tall, internally mocking his parents and Sadith while relishing the clean hit he just landed. Although the audience cheers his lineage, the young master asserts his individuality against the shadow of his father. Whispers of innate talent fill the stadium. Yet Earth rejects the word as a dismissal of his effort. He reflects bitterly on his father's neglect, realizing his current strength owes absolutely nothing to his heroic family. Trainar interrupts his brooding, warning the child not to be fooled by the fickle praise of the commoners. Nonetheless, Earth views this match as the ultimate opportunity to finally shed the heavy label of being a disappointment. He pushes forward, declaring that he cannot be bothered by the narrow-minded opinions of those watching from above. Rival wipes a trickle of blood from his mouth, his pride stung by the unexpected and powerful physical strike. The elite warrior's face contorts with growing fury while he glares at the boy who supposedly possessed no talent. Gasping for breath, Rival demands to know where Earth acquired such mysterious and overwhelming combat powers so suddenly. He points out that Earth has abandoned the family sword style for an entirely unknown and lethal martial art. The prodigy wonders if the legendary hero's hero or Mamu provided secret guidance to their struggling second-generation son. Earth responds with a smug grin, mocking Rival's dumbfounded expression while enjoying the elite's visible and intense confusion. He casually lists footwork, sparring, and speed reading as his methods, leaving his rival completely stunned and speechless. Pausing for a moment, the young master admits that those simple exercises might not actually be the whole story. He credits the mysterious mentor who taught him this style, unaware that Trainar is watching with a pensive look. Earth recalls a lifetime of being labeled the only failure among the children of the world's 7 greatest heroes. Comparing himself to the others, he acknowledges his past inability to match rivals' peerless and refined swordsmanship skills. He further reflects on his failure to ever reach the incredible level of magical mastery demonstrated by his peer Fu. Fiancé watches in disbelief as Earth openly admits he lacks her natural intellect and academic brilliance. He confesses that failing to meet the world's high expectations has been painfully eating away at him. Turning toward his opponent, he recalls the specific advice given to him by a very mysterious person. He remembers being told he lacks his father's talent and must utilize his own unique individuality instead. This realization strikes him with profound intensity, clearing his mind of all lingering doubts and hesitation. He smiles broadly, feeling refreshed now that he no longer feels pressured to imitate a legendary hero. Although still refining his new combat style, he remains dedicated to seeing his intense training through. With a determined expression, he pledges to forge his own path regardless of his parents' heroic legacies. Rival Janane stands in the middle of the arena, his silhouette shrouded in a dark, ominous aura. The prodigy begins to tremble with suppressed rage while muttering curses under his breath at his rival. He clicks his tongue in pure frustration, unable to accept that Earth is mocking their shared heritage. Losing his composure, the warrior bellows at Earth to finally stop messing around during this serious duel. He questions what their lives would even mean without inheriting the legendary power of the 7 heroes. Rival argues that their true duty is to preserve and pass on the achievements of their predecessors. A childhood memory surfaces of the group playing together, where Earth's leadership first guided them all. The young swordsman looks back at his friend, his internal conflict visibly weighing heavy on his heart. Rival remains deeply troubled by Earth's rejection of their father's paths, while standing firm in the arena. The hero's son acknowledges Rival's immense pride, but wonders why his friend has become so irrationally angry. Declaring the conversation finished, Rival assumes a lethal stance while raising his blade for a final strike. The elite warrior suddenly lunges forward with terrifying speed, deciding to go all out against his rival. Rival lunges with his blade, yet Earth avoids the lethal edge with terrifyingly calm and measured movements. Sedith watches from the stands, screaming in terror as the high-stakes duel reaches a fever pitch. Trainar explains that humans typically utilize only 30% of their latent potential during ordinary times. She adds that under extreme pressure, some can intentionally manifest the phenomenon known as superhuman strength. Even with his enhanced vision, Earth barely evades the elite swordsman's increasingly fast and lethal strikes. Struggling to track every movement, the boy realizes the sheer difficulty of maintaining his intense concentration. He parries a blow with his bandaged arm, noting that a real blade would have surely severed it. Earth declares that his past weakness is finally over as his internal energy begins to surge violently. A brilliant swirling aura of power erupts around him, catching the entire stadium by complete surprise. Rival watches in shock while Earth unseals his magical conduits, flooding his body with raw energy. Fiancée and her classmates stare in absolute awe at the unprecedented display of strength before them. Pushing himself past his natural limits, the young master prepares to unleash his final, decisive technique. Trainer identifies the glowing green aura as her supreme and legendary body-strengthening martial art. His eyes widen with intense focus while he channels the massive amount of energy into his fist. Executing the great demon super-evolution breakthrough, he transforms into a blur of pure, destructive speed. Within the mental void, the ancient monarch poses a profound question to her developing young student. He acknowledges his past identity as the mere son of Hero, the world's most legendary hero. Earth proudly asserts his current status as the personal disciple of the great demon king Trainar. The spectral queen asks what he intends to become from this moment forward in his journey. Roaring with absolute conviction, he declares he is the new, real him while striking with overwhelming force. Trainar screams Earth's name, encouraging him to finally prove himself on this grand stage. It was the first time his master ever used his name, recognizing him as an individual. Earth clenches his fist with newfound resolve, determined to charm everyone with his spectacular and hidden results. He charges forward with a wide, confident grin, prepared to finally reveal the fruit of his labor. Trainar hovers silently while observing that true repayment is more than just a pile of simple books. The ancient monarch smiles softly, acknowledging that the boy has finally found a better form of gratitude. Executing the great demon flick, Earth unleashes an explosive blast of power that rocks the entire arena. Rival is sent crashing violently into the stone wall, leaving him slumped amidst the crumbling brick debris. A heavy, stunned silence falls over the crowd as they witness the Academy's top prodigy being overwhelmed. Princess Fiancé and Fu can barely process the scene, wondering if the failure actually managed to win. Gasping for breath, Earth stands triumphant, while the announcer shouts about the shocking and unexpected turn of events. The Master of Ceremonies prepares to call the winner, while a hand grips the dusty arena floor. Slumped against the cracked wall, Rival mutters about the dignity and duty of his imperial sword art. Earth watches from a distance as the stadium erupts in a deafening cacophony of absolute, pure disbelief. The faces of the students are frozen in shock, unable to believe rival Janine has been bested. Sudeth covers her mouth in a wave of overwhelming emotion while watching her young master stand tall. Turning his gaze toward her, Earth waits for the final declaration as the announcer begins the name. Rival's eyes narrow with desperate intensity as he prepares to unleash a forbidden level of swordsmanship energy. The elite warrior suddenly lunges forward from the debris, refusing to accept an ignoble defeat in round one. Fiancé and Fu scream their names while the two rivals clash once more in the center arena. Sudeth watches in terror as she screams for her young master during the incredibly intense and high-stakes battle. Meanwhile, Earth surges forward with an explosive burst of movement that leaves a trail of pure kinetic energy. The boy calls out to Trainar internally while focusing his senses on the next stage of his transformation. Recalling a past training session on the grass, Earth asks his mentor about mastering a specific demonic art. He gazes in wonder at the Great Demon Devil Spiral, a technique possessing truly terrifying and destructive potential. Trainar warns him that such a technique consumes vast magical power and remains notoriously difficult to control properly. Back in the current fight, she notes that his current strength should technically make such a feat impossible. The young master grits his teeth while remembering her estimate that it would take half a year to learn. Ignoring the warnings, he gathers his swirling energy with a wicked grin while preparing to unleash his trump card. A colossal tornado erupts as he activates the Great Demon Earth Spiral, shocking everyone with its sheer magnitude. The spectators reel in absolute disbelief at the sight of the massive vortex consuming the center of the field. Even the legendary Demon King Trainar is left completely speechless by her disciple's sudden and explosive breakthrough. Sudith stands paralyzed with fear, her eyes wide as she witnesses the overwhelming power her master has attained. Rival and Earth both bellow with absolute passion while they charge into the final, decisive clash of energy. A violent impact shakes the entire stadium as Earth's fist finally connects with truly world-shattering and devastating force. The swirling demonic energy begins to dissipate, leaving behind a thick cloud of dust across the arena floor. Rival is sent skidding violently across the dirt, his body bouncing repeatedly from the sheer power of the blow. Earth eventually collapses onto his hands and knees, coughing and panting heavily from the immense physical strain. Gasping for breath, the young man looks up with a look of pure shock and mounting internal dread. His vision blurs as the silhouettes of his parents loom over him, questioning his place in their legacy. Spectators buzz with excitement as the legendary heroes, Hero and Mamu Reagan, are spotted among the crowd. Earth looks up in confusion when his father suddenly stands and begins to make an unexpected public announcement. Hero's voice booms across the arena, declaring that his son, Earth Reagan, will officially abstain from the match. The young master stands paralyzed with shock as Hero insists the graduation tournament must proceed without him immediately. Refusing to accept the sudden decision, Earth erupts in a fit of rage and demands an explanation from Hero. His desperate screams of protest echo through the stadium as his father unilaterally forfeits the battle on his behalf. The perspective shifts to the stands where Sudith stands amidst the bewildered crowd, her expression darkening quite significantly. The maid begins to tremble violently, her body consumed by a sudden and overwhelming wave of primal, deep-seated terror. Everyone watches the fading remnants of the demonic tornado, while Sudith struggles to maintain her fading mental composure. She nearly collapses as the traumatic sight of the technique triggers an agonizing and vivid memory of her past. Spectators murmur with suspicion, questioning why the hero's son is utilizing a technique associated with the great Demon King. Traynor is struck by a sudden, chilling realization. While watching the maid's intense and highly unusual emotional reaction, the ancient monarch deduces that Sadith is a lone survivor of the tragic Shisonatami incident from long ago. Fiancé desperately tries to soothe the hysterical maid, who continues to scream about the arrival of the Demon King. The hero's son admits he has never seen Sadith so broken, while Hero stares intently at the destructive vortex. Hero reveals that the specific tornado technique was used by the great Demon King to annihilate Sadith's peaceful hometown. A somber vision of a young, lonely war orphan standing amidst smoldering ruins highlights the depth of Sadith's trauma. Grabbing Aerith's arm, Hero commands his son to follow him while questioning the origin of the forbidden technique. The legendary hero demands to know how his son acquired such power and what he was doing in secret. Aerith stares at the ground, confessing that his grueling efforts were only meant to finally earn his father's recognition. Hero delivers a sharp, stinging slap to Aerith's face, immediately shattering the young man's moment of pride. With a look of cold disgust, Hero questions exactly what kind of hard work led to this outcome. The legendary hero labels the technique as a filthy trick, completely unworthy of an elite Imperial knight. Aerith stands reeling from the verbal assault as his father dismissively orders him to leave the arena. The surrounding crowd erupts in judgmental whispers, horrified that a hero's son would utilize demonic arts. Cruel accusations of cheating and lacking dignity echo through the stands. Tearing into Aerith's fragile reputation, overwhelmed by the public's malice, the boy hears demands for his immediate exile and labels of failure. Traynor watches the fallout in silence as Aerith internally defends the technique as his own hard-won power. Manifesting beside her student, the spectral monarch observes the growing distance between the boy and his father. Aerith calls out to his mentor while struggling to process the devastating rejection from his own family. Traynor commands him to reveal her existence to Hero, intending to take the blame for his temptation. She explains that Hero possesses secret knowledge that will force him to believe the impossible truth. The ancient queen tearfully laments her actions, claiming she never should have taught him her demonic skills. Aerith rejects her self-pity, silently acknowledging that her lessons were the only thing that helped him grow. Meanwhile, a hysterical Sadith is held back by Fiancé while rambling about the horrors humans once committed. Traynor gazes at the chaos, reflecting on the shared tragedy and cruelty that define their messy world. Realizing his mentor was the only one who truly saved him, Aerith softens his gaze toward her. The weight of her previous words resonates deeply within his mind as he prepares his next move. Standing between the ghost of a tyrant and a judgmental father, the young man finds his resolve. With a faint smile, he tells the trembling Demon King that she is absolutely not at fault. Aerith confidently questions Traynor about their master-disciple relationship, while she stares back in absolute stunned silence, asking what could possibly be wrong with a mentor sharing their legendary demonic skills with a willing disciple. Regardless of her protests, he reflects on his massive growth while Traynor reaches toward his retreating back. Roaring at the judgmental crowd, the young man declares he will no longer allow outsiders to deny him. He then turns his explosive fury toward his father, commanding the legendary hero to finally shut up. The boy screams about the immense pain and suffering he endured while training his ass off in secret. Boasting of his mastery, Aerith claims this technique is the ultimate culmination of his escape from a rotten life. A sudden and powerful punch connects with his father's face as he claims the technique for himself. Walking back through the arena, Aerith approaches the spectral form of the former monarch under heavy scrutiny. He calls out her name softly, sensing a rare shift in the ancient Demon King's usually composed demeanor. Traynor commands him to reveal her secret existence to Hero, intending to take the blame for his actions. She explains that Hero possesses forbidden knowledge that will force him to believe the impossible, ghostly truth. Breaking down in tears, the spirit laments teaching him her skills and blames herself for his current predicament. Aerith rejects her self-pity, acknowledging that her lessons were the sole reason he managed to finally grow up. Memories of wartime tragedy resurface as young Sadith clings to her savior, while demons loom in the shadows. Traynor reflects on the endless cycle of violence, noting that humans and demons alike suffer from same cruelty. The hero's son struggles with his emotions, realizing his mentor was the only one who ever truly saved him. The weight of her past words echoes through his mind, solidifying his resolve amidst the arena's chaotic atmosphere. Princess Fiancé and Fu dash toward him across the dirt, while the crowd watches the fallout in shock. He wonders if they have come to scold him for finally betraying his father's legacy and the masses. Earth clenches his bandaged fist, dismissing all doubt as he prepares to unleash his final attack. He executes the great demon Earth spiral, a colossal vortex of energy that consumes the entire arena. Fiancée and her classmates shield their faces from the intense pressure and debris created by the technique. Her eyes widen in absolute terror as she witnesses the sheer scale of his destructive power. A massive, smoking crater replaces the stadium floor, leaving everyone wondering if the boy survived the impact. Frantically reaching toward the pit, Fiancé screams for him to stop as the dust begins to settle. She gazes into the dark, bottomless hole, her voice echoing into the void while she calls his name. Deep within the crater, Earth grits his teeth, his face covered in sweat as he catches his breath. He punches through the debris with raw determination, intending to climb back up and finish the fight. A nostalgic vision surfaces of the four childhood friends promising to one day surpass their legendary fathers. He remembers young fiancée apologizing for her busy schedule, while promising to finally train with him tomorrow. The memory shifts to Sadith's graduation, where a tiny Earth asks if she will eventually leave him. She smiles with pure affection, promising that she would never actually leave her precious young master alone. Returning to reality, Sadith breaks down in tears, terrified that he has succumbed to the Demon King's magic. Earth's expression turns somber and hollow as he processes the painful rejection from the person he loves. A solitary stone marker stands amidst the ruins of his training, haunted by the ghost of failure. Kneeling alone under the crescent moon, the young man cries out in a fit of pure, agonizing despair. The countdown finally reaches its conclusion, marking today as the absolute worst day of his entire life. The vast night sky hangs over the quiet landscape as the weight of his isolation settles in deeply. Lying flat on the grass, he weeps bitterly while cursing the world that has finally abandoned him. Traynor watches Earth lying motionless, noting that the exhausted boy cannot even stand up anymore. She explains that his breakthrough technique has a strict 90-second limit, which he completely exhausted. Crossing her arms, the spectral monarch prepares to address the deep-seated pain within her disciple's heart. Lying in the grass, Earth weeps while admitting that a part of him still hoped for validation. He reflects on a lifetime of living in his father's shadow, constantly compared to the hero. By using a unique style, he desperately wanted to finally remove the label of being a disappointment. He dreamed of the day people would recognize his own individual strength and call him amazing. Yet even during the tournament, he felt the crowd only watched him as a reflection of his father. Clenching his fist, he laments that nobody saw his personal growth beyond their expectations of an ideal hero. Traynor acknowledges his profound suffering. Finding the world's narrow perception of him to be deeply frustrating, the ancient queen remains silent for a moment, empathizing with the boy's crushing sense of failure. Pointing downward, she declares there is only one way left to truly fulfill his hidden wishes. With a powerful shout, she commands him to surpass every achievement the legendary hero ever accomplished. She explains that his father is revered solely because he defeated the world's former demonic ruler. Traynor insists that if he accomplishes even greater feats, the world will eventually acknowledge his true power. Earth cries in despair, questioning how he could possibly exceed the deeds of a global savior. The Demon King scoffs, admitting that even she doesn't have the exact answer to his question. She suggests that achievements vary, from unifying nations to creating something truly great and lasting. Looking toward his parents' silhouettes, she notes that his answers lie far beyond this empire's borders. Finally, she encourages him to cast aside his limitations and aim to conquer the entire world. Traynor points outward, commanding the boy to make his name known across the entire empire and the world. Lying in the grass, Earth contemplates the impossible task of truly surpassing his legendary hero, father's shadow. He reflects on the peerless talents of his childhood friends, who are destined to be the world's masters. A fleeting memory of his younger, hopeful self surfaces, reminding him of his original dreams and aspirations. The young master realizes he must become an ultra-hero who transcends even his father's magnificent wartime legacy. Stepping firmly onto the earth, he decides to return to his roots with a brand newfound purpose. Roaring with a wild, manic grin, he finally vows to achieve something far greater than any hero before. The spectral queen smiles knowingly, recognizing that her disciple is finally ready to embrace his own dark destiny. Declaring he won't let society deny their existence, Earth prepares to head out into the unknown wider world. Standing together under the vast starlit sky, the unlikely duo resolves to travel to the ends of the earth. The night deepens over the quiet capital as the forbidden partnership of master and disciple marks a breakthrough. Imperial knights scour the city streets in a desperate and frantic search for the missing heir, Earth Reagan. A guard grumbles in frustration about the boy's disappearance before being interrupted by a local, curious elderly citizen. The old man inquires about the unusual activity, unaware of the chaos currently unfolding throughout the capital city. The knight scoffs, asking the man if he somehow missed the massive incident from today's graduation match. The mansion stands silent under the stars as the world processes the largest scandal since the war ended. Rapid footsteps and heavy panting echo through the dark, empty hallways of the grand and silent family estate. Princess Fiancé bursts through a doorway with a worried expression, her eyes searching the shadows for her friend. She rushes frantically into the living quarters, her heart racing as the realization of his absence begins sinking. Entering his deserted bedroom, she finally accepts the painful reality that Earth has truly vanished into the night. Fiancé stands alone in the silence, her heart heavy with the realization that Earth hasn't returned home. Meanwhile, the Imperial Knights scour the city as news of the Demon Lord's dark influence spreads rapidly. Desperate to find his son, Hero gallops through the woods to extend the search beyond the capital's walls. Fiancé trembles with dread, fearing a lethal confrontation if military units locate the runaway boy first. A painful memory resurfaces of Earth weeping in the arena, his spirit finally breaking under his father's gaze. The boy's eyes burned with resentment as he lamented the crushing burden of being born a hero's child. Standing within the empty mansion, the princess desperately wonders what hidden catalyst drove him to such extremes. She recalls a shocking moment he discarded his heritage to unleash the great demon king's forbidden combat arts. Sinking deeper into her thoughts, she begins to perceive the invisible scars that he carried for years. Taking a moment to breathe, she realizes this is her first time really examining the boy's personal sanctuary. Her gaze falls upon his desk, where the silence of his room reveals the secrets of his solitude. She discovers his academy textbook, worn and heavily bookmarked, proving his secret and tireless dedication to his studies. Scanning his bookshelf, she is stunned to find it filled with complex technical manuals rather than leisurely reading. A sharp pang of guilt strikes as she realizes neither she nor Hero ever truly acknowledged his diligence. She reflects on how his parents blindly praised him, while society relentlessly criticized his every perceived failure. The weight of everyone's crushing expectations finally becomes clear as she realizes he was drowning in resentment. She acknowledges that the 7 heroes only measured him against their own legendary standards, while ignoring his individuality. A haunting memory of her own laughter echoes, recalling how she flippantly wished he would just try harder. Tears of deep regret spill over as she remembers her mocking tone, realizing she worsened his secret agony. Collapsing onto the floor in total despair, the princess sobs apologies to the empty room he left behind. Mamu breaks down in tears, lamenting her failure as a parent to support her son's many silent struggles. She reflects on the past, realizing she outsourced his upbringing entirely to Sadith and neglected his inner self. The War Maiden weeps, wishing she had noticed the signs before he turned to the Demon Lord's skills. Meanwhile, Princess Fiancé bursts through the door, finding the distraught maid waiting in the shadows of the room. She gasps in shock, realizing Sadith has abandoned her hospital bed. Despite her severe physical and emotional exhaustion, the princess scolds her friend, questioning how she could recklessly sneak away without any formal medical permission. Looking pale and weak, Sadith ignores the reprimand to desperately ask for news regarding her missing young master. Fiancé admits with a heavy heart that Earth remains missing, while the search parties find absolutely nothing yet. The broken maid calls out to her sister figure, Mamu, as the weight of the scandal crushes her spirit. She recalls the traumatic hospital scene where she overheard the medical staff whispering about the recent arena disaster. The nurses gossiped about the Imperial Guard's relentless manhunt and the scandalous rumors of Earth's forbidden demonic connections. Back in the present, Sadith explains she couldn't bear to remain idle while the world slandered her master. Fiancé pulls the trembling woman into a tight, comforting embrace to steady her through this dark, painful hour. Mamu vows through her tears to protect Earth from any punishment, regardless of the Emperor's eventual royal judgment. Elsewhere, The maid remembers running through the city streets while hearing the toxic rumors spreading like a wildfire. The cruel commoners whispered venomous lies, claiming the hero's son cheated by utilizing dark and forbidden magical arts. Clenching her chest in silent agony, Sadith insists to herself that the judgmental public is completely and utterly wrong. She vividly remembers the countless hours spent watching him train alone, honing his body with tireless and honest effort. Reflecting on the match, she acknowledges that his early combat performance showcased his truly independent and raw strength. Finally, she shouts her conviction that her young master would never cheat, for that power was purely his own. Sadith laments being the closest person to Earth, yet failing to perceive his growing internal pain. Meanwhile, Mamu's eyes fill with tears as she finally admits to being a terrible, negligent mother. The War Maiden acknowledges that Sadith understands her son far more than his own biological family ever did. Reaching out in desperation, she pleads for the maid's help to finally begin mending their broken bond. Fiancé's gaze sharpens with a sudden, fiery determination as she vows to uncover everything about the boy. Reflecting on a long-lost past, Mamu yearns to see her son again, despite her many parenting failures. Her voice trembles while calling out his name, hoping for a miracle to return her lost child. The night sky hangs silently over the academy, echoing a mother's desperate and heartfelt plea for forgiveness. Elsewhere, the children of the legendary heroes gather beneath a grand, ornate ceiling to discuss their next move. Rival, fiancé, and Fu stand united with solemn expressions, feeling the heavy void left by Earth's disappearance. A lone voice begs for another chance to set things right before it is too late. Back under the crescent moon, the quiet evening air is suddenly broken by a casual greeting. Earth smiles to himself, reflecting on the short but life-changing duration of his current escape. Trainer nods in agreement, her ancient eyes reflecting a strange fondness for her new and impulsive disciple. The young man clutches his head and screams in absolute frustration about their endless 3-hour trek. Lost in the dense woods, he frantically searches for civilization, while the monarch labels him a spoiled child. The grim reality of camping in the wild sets in, making the exhausted boy groan with deep dread. He recalls his former life of luxury, dining within a massive mansion fueled by his father's authority. Dreaming of a soft bed and home-cooked meals, Earth's face twists into a comical mask of intense longing. The great demon king watches her pathetic student with a gaze filled with pure, unadulterated disgust. Earth screams his resolve to master camping, desperate to finally move past his father's suffocating shadow. Traynor mockingly inquires if the boy has any survival skills. While confidently asserting her own ancient expertise, the spectral monarch boasts that her mind holds every secret for wilderness survival, from cooking to basic tools. She mentions her past love for solo camping, though Earth quips it was merely due to her loneliness. Panic seizes the young master as he quickly retracts his insult to avoid the Demon King's inevitable wrath. A loud growl from his stomach reminds him of the urgent and pressing need for actual physical sustenance. Earth begins searching through the dense foliage, identifying food as their very first and most critical survival priority. Suddenly, a large, plump white rabbit appears in the clearing, presenting a perfect opportunity for a fresh meal. Unleashing a primal roar for meat, the starving boy lunges forward with a reckless and desperate jumping strike. The agile creature effortlessly evades the attack, leaving Earth to crash face first into the unforgiving forest floor. Emerging from the dirt with a bloody nose, the boy glares at the animal with intense and burning frustration. He continues his frantic pursuit through the thick trees, yet the small target remains frustratingly just out of reach. The rabbit leaps with supernatural grace onto a high branch, leaving the clumsy human student gasping in disbelief. Desperate shouts for food echo through the darkening woods as the chaotic hunt continues deep into the night. Heavy panting and groans of exhaustion fill the silent air, signifying the boy's mounting fatigue and total failure. Collapsing onto the grass, Earth laments his inability to catch his dinner, while Traynor watches with visible amusement. The ancient master provides a lecture on hunting theory, noting that small prey requires projectile weapons rather than fists. She explains that his lack of experience on uneven, overgrown forest terrain has placed him at a severe disadvantage. Tears well up in his eyes as he watches his potential dinner hop away into the safety of shadows. The clever rabbit looks back with a smug, mocking expression, clearly enjoying its victory over the hero's son. Gritting his teeth with burning resolve, Earth refuses to let a mere rabbit escape his clutches today. Trainer sighs at his incompetence, eventually relenting to provide the guidance her struggling disciple clearly needs. The ancient monarch offers her help, forcing the exhausted young master to swallow his pride once again. A lone rabbit sits motionless in the grass, unaware of the predator lurking just inches from its tail. Sensing immediate danger, the agile creature bolts across the uneven terrain with truly supernatural and blinding speed. Driven by sheer hunger, Earth lunges forward with a desperate grab that barely misses the fast-moving target. The small animal lets out a startled squeak while narrowly avoiding the boy's reaching and frantic hands. Losing his balance, the young master crashes into the dirt as his dinner hops away into safety. Traynor reminds him that his standard physical abilities are completely useless among these complex forest obstacles. She recalls his previous ocular training, urging him to apply his peripheral vision and honed reflexes here. Earth begins to analyze the surrounding terrain to determine the most efficient path forward through the woods. A skilled person becomes adept at making split-second tactical decisions while maintaining absolute composure during a chase. A brilliant streak of light marks the rabbit's trajectory, revealing the path to victory through the trees. Barking orders from above, the spectral queen commands him to strike toward 2 o'clock immediately. Earth executes precise footwork learned from ladder training to navigate the overgrown ground with newfound fluidity. He launches himself into the air, determined to prove that his long months of practice weren't pointless. Utilizing every skill he has accumulated, the hero's son closes the gap with terrifying and focused speed. Reaching out with both hands, he prepares to finally seize the prey that has eluded him all night. Successfully pinning the creature down, he roars that all his arduous training has finally paid off today. Panting heavily with a wild look in his eyes, he stares down at the rabbit he finally caught. Earth holds the rabbit high, shouting with pure joy after finally catching his potential dinner in the woods. Meanwhile, Traynor smirks with satisfaction while observing the boy's celebratory display, acknowledging that he finally succeeded after many attempts. The young master prepares for the next step, his face bright with the pride of a successful hunt. Suddenly, the mood shifts as the monarch commands him to hurry up and gut the creature immediately. Earth freezes in shock as he realizes the gruesome and bloody reality of preparing wild game for consumption. Furthermore, she instructs him to drain the blood, while the boy breaks into a cold sweat from the description. He frantically questions if he must perform the task alone, but Traynor simply scoffs at his visible hesitation. Mocking his soft nature, the Demon King asks if he truly feels bad for the small, helpless animal. Unexpectedly, Earth stammers a reply while clutching the rabbit, his resolve wavering as something rustles in the nearby bushes. He is stunned to see 2 more rabbits emerge, realizing that multiple creatures are watching him now. The animals stare back with teary eyes, their tiny faces projecting a heart-wrenching plea for their lost family member. Consequently, the realization that they are a family hits him like a physical blow, crushing his dwindling appetite. Sweating profusely, he begs the rabbits not to look at him while acknowledging their simple desire to survive. The hero's son struggles with his internal conflict, his mind racing through the morality of his current situation. Suddenly overcome by sympathy, he decides to name the rabbit Shooting Star and release it back to safety. He watches as the small creature reunites with his family, urging them all to flee into the woods. Traynor erupts in a fit of legendary fury, her demonic presence shaking the surrounding dark forest air. She berates her student for his foolishness, questioning how he intends to survive after letting his meal escape. Although Earth claims to understand, the monarch warns that his half-hearted hypocrisy will eventually lead to his death. With a cold and piercing gaze, she declares that the boy truly does not grasp the stakes of survival. Traynor suddenly senses an approaching presence, her expression shifting from irritation to a state of extreme high alert. Earth attempts to ask what is wrong before several heavy, rhythmic thudding sounds begin echoing through the woods. The spectral monarch stands perfectly still, focusing her senses on the source of the tremors vibrating through the earth. Sweat pours down the boy's face as the ominous sounds grow louder, signaling the arrival of something truly massive. A colossal foot slams into the forest floor, crushing the undergrowth with its incredible and overwhelming physical weight. A towering, muscular, demonic entity manifests from the shadows, its imposing silhouette dwarfing the terrified young master completely. The creature's dark eyes fixate on its prey, while Earth stammers in disbelief at the monstrous sight before him. Paralyzed by fear, he frantically asks Traynor about the identity of the terrifying giant currently standing in their path. A breakthrough for the master and disciple arrives as they face their first truly lethal encounter in the wild. Gazing upward with trepidation, Earth and his mentor realize that this opponent is unlike anything they have faced yet. Traynor identifies the massive beast as a tribal ogre, a species known for its primitive and extreme physical power. She recounts grim histories of these monsters using their extraordinary strength to slaughter humans with absolute and brutal ease. Ancient legends describe entire human settlements being overrun and obliterated by the relentless violence of these territorial giants. Earth recalls childhood warnings about being eaten by monsters, realizing those terrifying bedtime stories have finally become his reality. Even the great Demon King admits the situation is troublesome, given the massive gap in their current combat readiness. She warns that challenging such a top-class predator while exhausted would be a reckless and likely fatal decision. Gritting his teeth, the boy admits he lacks the necessary magic reserves to even activate his specialized breakthrough technique. The ogre begins to speak in a guttural tone, staring down at the small human with an unreadable expression. Shock washes over Earth when the monster addresses him, questioning the presence of a lost boy in these woods. Terrified and cornered, the hero's son bellows for the creature to stay back while preparing for the worst. Earth stammers out empty threats while trembling before the massive ogre, unsure of his next desperate move. Unexpectedly, the giant raises his hands in peace, frantically claiming he has no intention of fighting at all. The sudden display of passivity leaves both the young master and the Demon King completely and utterly speechless. Despite the ogre's sincere pleas not to be afraid, Earth remains suspicious of a potential and lethal trap. Traynor narrows her eyes, questioning if this beast is truly capable of such a complex and deceptive ruse. She soon realizes that an ordinary monster wouldn't possess this level of intelligence or seemingly genuine emotional empathy. The creature offers to treat his hungry guest to a meal, shocking Earth with his unexpected hospitality. Fearing for his safety, the boy adamantly refuses to enter an ogre's home upon their very first meeting. He recalls terrifying picture books from his childhood, depicting monsters who kidnap and eventually consume naive humans. Traynor calls out to him, noticing his irrational panic as he struggles to maintain his fading composure. The spectral queen assures him that she senses absolutely no murderous intent coming from the kind-hearted giant. She pragmatically points out that refusing the offer means starvation, as he lacks the strength to continue. Earth hesitates, torn between his deep-seated fears and the harsh reality of his current and miserable physical state. The ogre apologizes for his thoughtlessness, sadly acknowledging why a human would naturally be afraid of his race. He offers simple directions to the nearest city instead. While Earth reflects on his own internal racial prejudices, the boy remembers the stinging discrimination he faced during the tournament for using the Demon King's forbidden arts. Realizing he is no better than those who judged him, Earth offers a sincere and heartfelt apology instead. He admits to being overly guarded due to his ignorance, feeling ashamed for stepping all over such kindness. Looking the giant in the eye, he confesses to viewing him through the narrow lens of societal prejudice. Finally, a loud growl from his stomach echoes through the woods, punctuating his desperate need for actual food. The ogre laughs heartily, realizing the boy was simply acting out due to his extreme hunger. Inviting the young master to follow him, the giant mentions that his latest hunt was quite successful. Earth and Traynor walk through the dense woods behind the massive creature, heading toward his humble abode. The giant introduces himself as Akka and friendly asks for his guest name in return. Fearing his identity might be leaked, Earth hesitates to provide his full name, while Akka calls him Kind. Confused by the sudden praise, the boy questions why an ogre would consider a human like him kind. Akka sadly reflects on how every human he previously encountered was terrified by his monstrous demonic appearance. He notes that Earth was brave enough to speak with him, which is a rare occurrence. Internally, the boy realizes he cannot judge others when he was guilty of the same shallow prejudice. The giant beams with genuine happiness, feeling truly accepted for the first time after receiving an apology. Earth follows silently, amazed that such a gentle and human-like individual exists within a monster's frame. They eventually reach a modest wooden hut nestled deep within the silent and starlit forest clearing. Akka apologizes for the messy state of his dwelling, while Earth politely dismisses the giant's concerns. The young master is stunned to discover a thriving farm that the ogre built all by himself. Noting the massive scale of the door, Earth asks if his host lives entirely alone here, aka welcomes them inside, confirming his solitary lifestyle while preparing to host his first human guest. Entering the humble home, the giant begins to carefully stoke a warm fire within the central hearth. He instructs Earth to sit wherever he likes while he begins the process of preparing their meal. The boy gazes at the surroundings, noting how different this ogre-sized construction feels from imperial buildings. Trainer identifies the unique building style as architecture originating from the distant and mysterious Eastern countries. Trainer observes the rough but impressive construction of the house, suspecting the ogre built it all by himself. Earth sits in stunned silence, struggling to process that a monster is capable of such advanced self-sufficiency. Trainer continues to mock her student, contrasting the ogre's mastery with his own pathetic failure to catch dinner. A sudden and heavenly fragrance interrupts their conversation, drawing the boy's gaze toward the stone hearth area. Aka presents the finished dishes with a gentle smile, inviting his guest to enjoy the fruits of his labor. The table is laden with glistening white rice, a crisp green salad, and a plate of sliced meat. Earth's eyes bulge in pure shock as he beholds a meal that looks surprisingly refined and incredibly delicious. He stammers a question about the cooking, while the giant confirms his role as the sole chef here. The ogre details how he cultivated the demonic grain and harvested the fresh, wild greens from his farm. Despite his initial hesitation, the starving young master finds the presentation to be absolutely and undeniably professional. Giving a traditional thanks for the meal, he picks up a fork and prepares for the first bite. He lifts a piece of seasoned meat, his mouth watering as he anticipates the flavor of the catch. The savory juices explode across his palate, leaving him shouting in pure culinary ecstasy at the perfect seasoning. The rice is exceptionally fluffy and consistent, far exceeding the quality of standard rations he usually consumes daily. Overwhelmed by the warmth and flavor, the boy weeps openly while devouring the best meal of his life. Mid-bite, a sudden and startling thought flashes through his mind, causing him to freeze in temporary and silent shock. He notes the vibrant freshness of the forest salad, which perfectly complements the heavy and rich savory meat. A vision of Sadith appears, imagining her sharp reprimands for his lack of dignity at the dinner table. He scrapes the final remnants from his plate, unwilling to let even a single morsel go to waste. Dropping his utensils, he stares at the empty dishes while preparing to deliver his final and honest verdict. Earth takes another bite of the delicious meal, savoring the incredible flavors prepared by the friendly ogre. Subsequently, the young master closes his eyes in delight, finding the food incredibly crisp and undeniably good. Furthermore, he notes that the combination of fresh vegetables and juicy meat creates an absolutely irresistible taste. As the boy devours the food with intensity, Akka watches him with a mixture of confusion and concern. Eventually sitting on the wooden floor, Earth begins to weep while reflecting on the unexpected kindness received. A single tear rolls down his cheek while the weight of his situation finally sinks in quite deeply. Meanwhile, the giant ogre watches in bewilderment, wondering if his cooking somehow managed to taste bad. Struggling to speak with his mouth full, the boy can only mutter about his current inability to communicate. Nonetheless, Akka remains silent while watching Earth with a gaze filled with curiosity and genuine, heartfelt concern. Regardless of the silence, the young man continues to eat heartily while providing a peaceful and safe atmosphere. Every bite brings a sense of comfort that he has desperately lacked since leaving his high society life. He apologizes for his behavior, admitting that the food is actually the best he has ever tasted. Earth reveals that he actually ran away from home following a series of truly disastrous and public events. Staring into the flickering flames, he explains that his current situation prevents him from ever returning home. He recalls his decision to handle things alone, despite his initial failure to even feed himself today. The boy reflects on the warmth he felt while eating the food, comparing it to his past life. Tears of gratitude spill over as he acknowledges the sincere kindness shown to him by a supposed monster. Realizing he can only move forward, he steels his resolve to continue his journey through the unknown world. The young master offers a final and deeply heartfelt thank you to Akka for his selfless generosity. Trainer gestures toward her disciple, her silent presence acknowledging the profound and unexpected bond between human and ogre. Aka expresses his sincere gratitude toward Earth while they sit inside the warm and humble wooden hut. The giant reveals that despite his monstrous appearance, he harbors a deep-seated hatred for all forms of violence. He explains that human fear forced him into a life of isolation deep within these quiet, starlit woods. For over 10 long years, he has lived alone, finding peace away from the judgmental eyes of mankind. The ogre thanks the young master for his bravery and for genuinely enjoying the food he prepared. While Aka praises Earth's character, the boy internally realizes that the giant is the truly virtuous one here. Earth reflects on how the label of an ogre has unfairly trapped Aka in a cycle of endless loneliness. Suddenly, the gentle giant leans in and asks Earth to teach him more about the ways of humans. AKA wistfully expresses his heartfelt hope that they might eventually become true friends in the distant future. The hero's son looks upon the lonely monster with a pensive expression, feeling a sudden surge of empathy. He remains silent for a moment, weighing the consequences of his next words against his own internal principles. With a bright and genuine smile, Earth asks if they aren't already considered to be friends right now. The unexpected declaration of friendship leaves the massive tribal ogre completely paralyzed in a state of absolute shock. And overwhelmed by the boy's acceptance, Aka begins to weep openly as his long-standing isolation finally comes to an end. The giant blubbers about Earth's incredible sweetness, while the flustered young master desperately tries to calm him down. Earth reflects on his past, where status and expectations always kept him distant from his elite childhood friends. He admits that he never anticipated finding a companion he could truly speak with on an equal footing. Seeing the monster's joy, he realizes that leaving the Empire was actually the best decision he ever made. Traynor observes them, noting the irony of the hero's son calling a member of her race his friend. The spectral queen turns her attention toward a nearby shelf, noticing something that catches her sharp, ancient eyes. Traynor notes the ogre's craftsmanship while observing a handmade shogi board, further proving the monster's surprisingly advanced intellect. The morning sun eventually rises over the dense forest canopy, signaling the beginning of a new day of travel. Aki points toward a hidden path through the woods, explaining that following the river will lead toward the city. Standing outside the humble hut, Earth and Traynor offer their sincere thanks to Aka before preparing to depart. The young master praises the ogre's housework, while the giant bashfully dismisses the compliment regarding his laundry skills. AKA questions if Earth truly intends to leave his home forever, but the boy confirms he cannot return anyway. Wanting to repay the giant's kindness, Earth asks if there is anything Aka desires from the nearby human city. He explains his urgent need to flee beyond the Empire's territory as soon as possible, despite his lack of direction. AKI expresses a fear that Earth will be lonely. Though the boy promises to return and visit his friend, the gentle giant calls Earth a truly good man. Prompting a humble and bashful response from the hero's son, Earth offers to bring back furniture or handy tools, yet he is surprised by the giant's much simpler request. Aka reveals a hidden longing to taste human cake, an exotic and legendary sweet he has only heard rumors of. The ogre wistfully describes the sweet and fluffy reputation of human desserts, and Earth cheerfully promises to deliver one. As Earth prepares to head out into the forest, Aka suddenly calls him back for one final, important gesture. Reaching out with his large hand, the giant presents a circular wooden pendant and urges Earth to take it immediately. Earth accepts the mysterious gift with wonder, while Aka explains it is a handmade protection charm from his ancestral hometown. Gazing at the rough handmade edges of the carving, the boy feels the warmth and sincerity put into it. Earth is amazed that Aka carved it himself. As the giant bashfully admits that wood carving is his personal hobby, the ogre expresses his heartfelt hope that the talisman will safeguard his friend from the many dangers lying ahead. Clutching the charm tightly, Earth offers a final and genuine thank you, while promising to treasure the meaningful gift. Aka calls out to Earth, catching his attention for a final moment before his departure from the hut. The gentle giant offers a warm smile and a peace sign as a parting gesture of their bond. Earth looks toward Traynor, noting the deep emotional impact of the Red Ogre's sincere and tearful farewell. Returning the peace sign with a broad grin, the boy vows never to forget their shared time together. Shouting his goodbye, the hero's son officially sets off from the clearing to continue his long journey. Recalling the moment, Aka presents the handmade talisman once more as a meaningful token of their new friendship. Looking completely surprised by the gesture, Earth asks about the specific nature of the small wooden gift. The giant explains that the charm is a handmade protective object from his ancestral and distant ogre hometown. Heavy rhythmic sounds echo through the woods as a new chapter of their forbidden partnership begins today. Dashing through the dense forest, Earth pushes his physical limits while navigating the complex and uneven terrain. Trainer hovers alongside her student, questioning if he is partaking in voluntary training during his travel time. He reflects on his previous movements, aiming to master his own unique and efficient path through the wild. The spectral monarch warns him to stay focused and not to veer off his designated path while running. Smiling as he moves, the young master considers buying a gift for Akka once he reaches civilization. However, the Demon King mockingly asks if he even has any money while showing a completely empty purse. The afternoon sun begins to set as the reality of his penniless state finally hits him quite hard. They eventually reach a nearby settlement and enter a local establishment to find work for the day. Earth inquires about registering as a hunter, but the guild clerk looks back with a dismissive, skeptical expression. Trainer watches the interaction with amusement, peeking over the counter at the guild's strict administrative policies. The man refuses his request, stating that registration is impossible without an official academy graduation certificate or ID. Earth asks the clerk about performing simple chores, but receives a blunt and immediate rejection from the man. The clerk explains that an official identification card or diploma is strictly required to process any guild hiring. Realizing his predicament, the boy reflects that only illegal black market organizations operate outside of these government rules. He worries that even with proper documentation, his famous name would immediately reveal his true identity to anyone. A vision of his father's relentless search party haunts him, emphasizing his desperate need to remain completely hidden. Suddenly, a gruff voice from behind interrupts his thoughts, impatiently demanding to know if he is finally done. A rugged warrior with an eye patch scolds him for holding up the busy line at the counter. Frightened and flustered, the young master stammers a quick apology while hurrying away to avoid any further conflict. Nearby citizens whisper rumors about a dangerous ninja outcast named Fuma, who was recently spotted within the forest. Walking through the city, the boy looks up at the towering architecture while contemplating his next difficult move. The bustling town streets are filled with ordinary commoners and armored warriors going about their own daily business. Traynor observes her student's frustration, noting that finding legitimate employment without any identification will be nearly impossible. Earth grumbles about human inefficiency, realizing that without an income, escaping the Empire's territory is extremely unlikely. A sudden explosion of loud and rhythmic cheering from a nearby building catches the boy's attention quite unexpectedly. A dense crowd gathers around a spectacle, marveling at a talented individual who has achieved 20 consecutive wins. Piqued by curiosity, the spectral Demon King suggests they take a quick peek at the unfolding local commotion. The hero's son pushes through the thick wall of spectators to finally see the source of the excitement. He is surprised to find a competitive match of Go taking place right in the middle of the city. The traditional board game of Go involves utilizing black and white stones to outmaneuver a strategic opponent. Players use these small stones to systematically expand their territory across the grid to claim an ultimate victory. Traynor recalls seeing a Go board in Akka's home, which the unobservant Earth completely failed to notice. The young master asks if his mentor is familiar with the game, receiving a very confident confirmation. She details the ancient history of Go, noting it has been popular among demons for over a millennium. With a sharp gaze, she explains it was once famously referred to as the Demon King's own game. Earth quips about the obvious naming choice, while they continue to observe the growing crowd of spectators. The official asks for any remaining challengers, while the hero's son looks on with a bewildered expression. A man bellows for anyone to face the Japon resident, known as the mysterious Shinobu Stork. Earth is struck by the girl's age and the distinct cultural differences between Japon and imperial citizens. Traynor senses that the group consists of highly skilled warriors rather than simple travelers from the east. The boy asks if they are samurai, though the spectral queen suggests their identity is far more complex. Seeing no more opponents, the announcer continues his desperate search for a worthy challenger in the city. The announcement of a massive prize worth 100,000 suburas sends Earth into immediate and total shock. His eyes sparkle at the mention of money, while Shinobu decides that she has finally played enough today. The girl claims she has already earned a sufficient amount and gauge the local players' lackluster skill levels. The man laments that the audience is losing interest while collecting the coins from the defeated opponents. Earth processes the high-stakes nature of the game, realizing that losing would require a payment he lacks. Shinobu proudly boasts of her own beauty and overflowing sex appeal, leaving everyone around her completely stunned. Left in a state of utter deadpan silence, Earth and Trainar witness her truly arrogant and narcissistic personality. Onlookers murmur about her unpleasant attitude, noting that her terrible character ruins her otherwise ladylike appearance. The commoners grumble about the cocky girl's behavior, but begrudgingly admit her mastery of the strategic game. Observing the crowd's hesitation, Earth focuses on the prize money, while others discuss finding their missing brother nearby. Trainer suddenly commands her disciple to step forward, catching the young master completely off guard with her unexpected order. He frantically protests to his mentor, admitting that he possesses absolutely zero knowledge regarding the board game of Go. The spectral monarch dismisses his concerns, claiming that he doesn't need to know anything to achieve a great victory. Suspicious of her plan, Earth realizes that Trainar intends to help him cheat his way to the large prize. As the announcer calls for new challengers, the arrogant girl decides she has finally had enough for the day. Stealing his resolve for the reward, the hero's son suddenly bellows his challenge to the entire shocked crowd. The spectators whisper in amazement at his bravery as the young boy confidently approaches the high-stakes game table. Wishing him luck, the crowd watches intently as Earth takes his seat opposite the talented and mysterious Japone girl. Shinobu inquires about his age, discovering that the brave new challenger is exactly 15 years old, just like her. She reflects on their shared age with a pensive look, finding it rare to face a peer in this game. Identifying him as an imperial citizen, she mockingly questions his competence and doubts his ability to provide a challenge. Proceeding regardless, she admits it is not every day she gets to play against someone from her own generation. The atmosphere turns incredibly tense as both competitors focus their sharp and competitive gazes across the wooden game board. Earth allows his opponent to take the first turn, prompting a sarcastic remark about his seemingly misplaced imperial kindness. Under the Demon King's guidance, the boy begins the match by targeting the strategically vital top right corner star. A heavy silence falls over the audience as they listen to the rhythmic tapping of stones upon the board. Shinobu pauses to think, sensing a hidden and sophisticated depth behind the simple opening moves her opponent just made. She realizes that Earth is utilizing an old-fashioned tactic, which visibly surprises both her and the watching spectators. Trainar confirms the strategy, admitting that she is indeed utilizing a legendary and powerful tactic from 15 years ago. Shinobu confidently places another stone. While Earth remains completely silent and focused under Trainar's mental guidance, her eyes suddenly widen in absolute shock as she begins to perceive the true and terrifying depth. She stands up abruptly with a loud bang, nearly knocking the wooden board over in her sudden panic. The young master looks up with a blank and confused expression, wondering exactly what triggered such a reaction. Gasping for breath, the girl stares at the board with a look of pure, unadulterated horror and disbelief. Trainar explains that her specialized strategy functions exactly like a coordinated and lethal small unit surprise attack. The ancient Demon King wears a wicked, predatory grin while anticipating the complete destruction of her opponent's spirit. She warns that failing to counter now will allow the enemy to penetrate the heart of her camp. Mockery drips from her voice as she points out that every defensive line is now poised to collapse. Earth trembles from the intense atmospheric pressure, desperately needing a clear explanation for the high-level tactical exchange. Despite her growing fear, Shinobu realizes she has no choice but to follow the path he has forced. The provocation is exactly what Trainar desired, leading the girl deeper into an inescapable and deadly strategic web. With a triumphant laugh, the monarch commands her disciple to come forth and deliver the final crushing blow. Everything is proceeding exactly according to her ancient and superior expectations while the final moves are made. A massive, dark shadow looms over the board, symbolizing the inevitable and total defeat facing the young challenger. The Demon King commands the girl to bow down before the truly overwhelming power of her legendary move. Shinobu's supposedly impenetrable formation is completely obliterated, leaving her paralyzed by the sudden and absolute failure. Earth's hand moves with newfound confidence, placing the final stone that effectively ends the intense and high-stakes duel. The girl finally lowers her head in total defeat, softly muttering her concession to the hero's mysterious son. The surrounding crowd erupts in a deafening wave of cheers, absolutely stunned by the young boy's incredible victory. Shinobu and her guardians stand in disbelief as the young master processes his unexpected and confusing strategic victory. Quickly regaining his composure, the boy demands the promised prize money from the defeated and stunned Japone resident. Although visibly shaken by the loss, the girl begrudgingly agrees to honor the high-stakes agreement between them. She hands over a heavy bag of currency, while the young man thanks her for the much-needed funds. Unexpectedly, the boy's hand makes accidental contact with the girl's chest, leaving both players in complete shock. Flustered and completely overwhelmed by the chaotic turn of events, the hero's son stammers in pure, wide-eyed confusion. With a blushing face and dazed eyes, Shinobu desperately requests another round to salvage her wounded pride. He frantically protests, claiming this development was never part of the deal and rejecting the money altogether. The arrogant girl continues to boast about her peerless skills and beauty, while dismissing her recent humiliating loss. Internally, the boy admits that his ghostly mentor was the one actually responsible for the brilliant strategic play. Trainer laughs with delight, suggesting they play once more, while her student finds the whole situation quite exhausting. He informs the girl that he has other pressing plans and wishes to conclude their business right here. To his horror, Shinobu impulsively decides to tag along, leaving him in a state of absolute frantic panic. Her guardian attempts to intervene, but the girl ruthlessly commands him to remain silent while she pursues Earth. Getting uncomfortably close, she attempts to charm the boy by emphasizing her own cuteness and undeniable style. In a moment of sudden physical exertion, something small and unexpected suddenly flies off from her clothing. A padded bra insert sails through the air, while both players watch in a state of total shock. Earth realizes with embarrassment that her chest padding has failed, while the girl breaks into a nervous sweat. Mortified by the public exposure, the young warrior immediately dashes away to retrieve the fallen and awkward object. She frantically wiggles to readjust her clothing while kneeling on the ground in a state of deep humiliation. Shinobu dismisses the previous awkward moment, telling Earth never mind while looking away with a small, polite smile. Suddenly, the girl bellows a loud goodbye and dashes away at incredible speed, leaving the boy standing in silence. Her panicked guardians frantically chase after her, while Earth and Trainer watch the chaotic scene unfold with visible bewilderment. The young master remains completely speechless after her bizarre departure as the dust from her exit slowly begins settling. Moving on, he eventually reaches a grand and well-maintained brick building that serves as the city's premier bakery. A cheerful greeting welcomes him as he views a wide assortment of freshly baked scones and delicious berry cakes. Earth marvels at the sheer variety of desserts. Feeling completely overwhelmed by the many sweet choices before him, he seeks advice from his spectral mentor, asking what specific flavor of cake an ogre would likely enjoy eating. Trainer suggests a rich creme cake for a gift, or perhaps simple cupcakes if he wants to be frugal. Ignoring the idea of choosing, the boy decides to purchase one of every single item the bakery currently offers. He justifies his reckless spending by noting his massive prize winnings, much to the Demon King's extreme and visible annoyance. Trainer critiques his terrible sense of money management while the clerk happily begins processing his truly enormous order. Earth defends himself by recalling fiancé's ridiculously large birthday cake, which the monarch finds to be a poor comparison. While the staff packages his goods, the boy orders a slice of cake and tea to enjoy his weight. A beautifully garnished slice of cake and a cup of steaming aromatic tea are soon presented to his table. Sitting alone in the cafe, he curiously asks Trainer if spirits ever experience the physical sensation of actual hunger. The ancient monarch pauses to reflect on his question, her expression becoming unusually somber and deeply pensive for once. She admits to lacking physical cravings since losing her mortal form, while Earth continues to savor his delicious dessert. Although currently uninterested, she notes that an unknown or exotic food might eventually pique her curiosity one day. He finishes his snack in silence, gazing at the empty plate while waiting for his many gifts to arrive. Calling for attention, Earth addresses the bakery clerk while finishing his small meal in the quiet shop. Trainer watches him closely, her ghostly presence floating right beside the unsuspecting and busy service counter. The remains of the beautifully crafted cake sit beside a half-drunk cup of fragrant and warm tea. Noticing his distant gaze, The spectral monarch inquires about her student's sudden and unusually deep contemplative mood. He admits there's likely no logical point to his plan since she lacks a physical body to eat. Flustered, the boy urges her to just consider the dessert a simple and sincere ritualistic offering. Although she labels the gesture a bit wasteful, Earth remains firm in his decision to share the experience. The Demon King settles at the table, her ancient eyes softening as she gazes at the human delicacy. With a rare, genuine smile, she formally accepts his offering while he looks on with silent relief. Suddenly, nearby patrons begin whispering frantically about a strange and ominous sight currently developing outside. Eavesdropping on their conversation, Earth turns his attention toward the window with a look of mounting concern. A thick pillar of dark smoke rises from the distant mountains, casting a shadow over the peaceful town. Commoners panic about a possible forest fire, while the hero's son senses a much more dangerous cause. News of ninja outcasts being spotted nearby spreads rapidly, catching the young master's full and immediate attention. He recalls rumors about elite free hunters from Japan currently operating within the borders of the empire. His eyes sharpen as he learns they are hunting a monster tribe dwelling high within the mountain range. A chilling realization hits him that Akka might be the target of these highly trained and lethal assassins. The sun hangs high over the bakery as the peaceful atmosphere is suddenly shattered by the incoming news. The clerk returns with his packaged goods only to find her customer's seat completely and abruptly deserted. Only the half-eaten cake remains on the table as Earth dashes toward the mountains to save his friend. Gritting his teeth, Earth pushes his body to the limit as he races back toward the mountains. Gasping for breath, the boy sprints through the dense undergrowth while the sound of his exhaustion echoes. Frantic and sweating, he ignores his fatigue while Trainer follows closely with a look of mounting concern. He recalls the rumors regarding monster hunters and realizes Akka's life is in immediate and mortal danger. The Demon King acknowledges that despite his peaceful life, the giant is still viewed as a terrifying monster. News of an ogre sighting would inevitably draw the attention of lethal and highly trained hunter units. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the boy runs faster, determined to protect his first true friend. He reflects on the shared isolation they both felt when they first encountered each other in the woods. Cursing his lack of speed, he bellows that they must arrive before the hunters reach the hut. Trainer warns that any further delay will likely result in the gentle giant's immediate and certain death. The spectral monarch begins to comment on the ogre as they finally approach the mountain area. A sudden calm voice interrupts the silence, startling the young master as he continues his frantic dash. A mysterious warrior armed with two katanas blocks the path, questioning why a child is making noise. Earth and his mentor freeze in their tracks, sensing a dangerous and expert presence standing before them. A hooded figure manifests from the shadows, confirming the presence of a supposedly dangerous and lethal ogre. The stranger wears a sinister, knowing grin that sends a cold shiver down the young boy's spine. Narrowing his eyes, Earth attempts to identify the individual while preparing for an inevitable and violent confrontation. He recalls the talk of Japone hunters from earlier, suspecting this man belongs to that elite group. The hooded warrior asks if the boy recognizes them, revealing a hidden and highly specialized martial intent. Trainer commands her disciple to ready himself, noting that their presence has apparently been noticed today.